Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your patience. We have been waiting to have quorum, which we do have now. Thankfully, we're going to be recording this meeting. So by participating, you're consenting to us recording. We're going to let everybody get settled, and then we will get started in about 15 seconds. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us live and virtually. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to send a chat to the host on WebEx or talk to one of the POC team members here in the room. Commissioners and panelists, as a reminder, please speak directly into the microphone so that our live and virtual participants can hear you clearly. And with that, I am going to say good morning and turn it over to Chair Mundo.
Good morning. It is 9:15, Monday, June 23rd, 2025. I am calling to order the meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I am Eduardo Mundo, Chair of the Commission. Welcome, and we look forward to hearing from our panelists, including the Chief today, and from commissioners, the public, on several important issues, including probation's depopulation plan updates, BSCC compliance, some pressing human resource issues, and updates from the Department of Youth Development. A busy meeting, and I know you all want to hear from the chief, so let's get started. I will turn it over to Wendy Julian, our executive director, to explain how you can participate during today's meetings, and then she will call the roll.
Thank you. And I am going to ask you, Chair Mundo, since we have the chief here, that maybe we consider changing the order of the items to begin with the items that involve his presentation, because the first item after my roll call in the minutes is for my report. I will be staying as long as you want me to, but I'd like for the chief to be able to get back to work when he can. So if we can change the order, then we can proceed with that item.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, good morning, welcome. As always, we encourage real public participation here at the Probation Oversight Commission, and we welcome your comments in writing or live today. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each agenda item at the end of the meeting, also for items not on the agenda, since this is a replacement of our regular meeting. For the items on the agenda, Chair Mundo will introduce them, we'll hear any presentation, and then we'll take public comment before the commission takes any action. If there are more people that want to participate than we have time for, we will consider scheduling additional town halls or reducing the amount of time for each speaker. As a reminder, please remember to speak directly into the microphone so our live and virtual attendees can hear everyone clearly. I'd like to ask for you to abide by the following code of conduct. Please stop speaking immediately when your time ends so I don't have to interrupt you. Please make sure your public comment relates to the subject matter of the item. Please remain respectful of each other and the forum. To participate is easy. If you're here in the room, you just come up to the podium and we will happily welcome your comments. If you're online, in order to participate, you have to be participating through WebEx. You can't participate in the meeting. You can only watch it if you're on YouTube. If you're on WebEx, you tap the little hand icon during the item you want to speak on, and we'll put you in the list. If you're calling in to WebEx and want to comment, please press *3 on your phone to activate the raise hand feature. When we call your name, you may have to unmute yourself if you're on WebEx by either pressing the microphone button or dialing *6 on your phone. All commenters will have 2 minutes today unless the chair determines otherwise based on the number of commenters. If you'd like to make your comment in writing, you may do so. You can send us an email at info@poc.lacounty.gov. Please do not send your public comment or any comments about the meeting in the chat. Only the host will see it, and it won't be logged as public comment, and the commissioners won't see it. Our meeting is being broadcast live to YouTube, but as I said, there's no engagement with users there. But please subscribe to our channel and to all of our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at LA County POC. Buenos días, bienvenidos a la reunión. Ya hemos iniciado la conferencia virtual por WebEx y también en persona. Si le gustaría hacer un comentario público, puede hacer clic en la imagen pequeña de la mano que está en la parte baja de la pantalla y abriremos un micrófono. Si está escuchando la conferencia por teléfono y quiere hacer un comentario público, presione *3 y le llamaremos por su número de teléfono. Si está viendo la conferencia en vivo por YouTube, no puede participar. Tiene que estar participando vía WebEx o aquí en persona. Si prefiere hacer sus comentarios en español, le daremos el doble del tiempo y podemos proveer traducción al inglés o usted puede proveer su propio traductor. Bienvenidos. I'm now going to call the roll. Commissioners, please respond when I call your name. Commissioner Canales will be arriving momentarily, and we will note in the minutes her arrival. Commissioner Brooke Harris? Present. Commissioner Jackson is absent today. Commissioner Kakani?
Present.
Commissioner Meredith will be arriving, and we will note his arrival in the minutes. Commissioner Prater, the same. Commissioner Shipp?
Present.
Commissioner Terry?
Present.
Chair Mundo?
Present.
So with 5 members present and 2 on their way, we do have quorum.
Thank you, Wendy. Let's proceed with item 2, the approval of the May 8th regular meeting minutes and the June 9th special meeting minutes. Wendy, do we have any written or public comments?
We do not. Anybody want to make public comment on the minutes?
Okay, seeing none, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the May 8th regular meeting minutes and the June 9th special meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion
both
to
meeting
approve.
minutes. Seconded.
Commissioner Kakani, seconded by Commissioner Harris. Oh. Okay, no changes. Let's approve by a voice vote.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. We have a motion and we're good. So we are going to skip item 3 for now and return after the chief's presentation, which is agenda item 4, to discuss and take possible action on a presentation from Chief Guillermo Villarosa about updates to the plan to depopulate Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, including progress on preparing other facilities for the movement of youth, BSCC compliance, specifically the approval of Barry J. Nardoff and Camp Kirkpatrick for use as juvenile halls, updates on the notification processes and communications with families, CBOs, and county programs and service providers who are impacted by the relocations, and response to the PLC's recommended depopulation solution on improving the intake process to reduce youth length of stay who do not pose a risk to public safety. Chief, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I think the best thing to do is a summary since we last met.
Do you want the PowerPoint presentation that you had for the board up? Or
Sure.
Jennifer, is that possible to put the PowerPoint up?
Might make it easier.
It's a great PowerPoint. Nobody got to see it.
And I'd like to thank you for being here.
Yes,
Yeah.
give us just a moment. We're actually going to put the department's PowerPoint that they had prepared for the board meeting last Tuesday that ended up not happening because of the time.
But what I can say in
You
the
can get
interim,
started, sure.
yeah, what I can say in the interim is two things have happened since I was last present. One is that the court approved the proposal by probation and for the depopulation plan with some modifications, or rather than modifications, some additions for further information that the court wanted to track. Among them, the communication with families and assuring that every single young person that's at Kilpatrick the court had an opportunity of a minimum of 2 weeks to get information with the best placement for them before any move to Nydorf. As of today, every one of those youth has had a report sent back to court and is either pending a court hearing or for the court to make a determination. All of them had an alternative recommendation other than a return to Nydorf. We certainly can't predict how the judges are going to determine if that's appropriate or not. And so we're essentially on hold waiting for the outcome of those. So no movement of those young people back to Nydorf as of yet. Somar, Nydorf, so many names for the same location. And with respect to, I suspect you're going to want details on BSCC. The request for the alternative use of the facilities has been submitted to BSCC pending a visit from them, an inspection in Nydorf, and then subsequently a determination whether it could be used as a juvenile hall or not.
So you said Nydorf and Kilpatrick, or just Nydorf? Sorry, can you just repeat what you just said? Sorry.
No, you're right. I just said Nydorf, but Kilpatrick as well. It's just that the difference is that they've now indicated they're going to do a site visit at Nydorf.
Oh, not for Kilpatrick.
Kilpatrick, there has already been a pre-inspection visit.
As we wait, can you talk about just the numbers at Los Padrinos and staffing and how that's going? I understand that there was some kind of reassignment occurring.
No, so I think what you're referring to is in preparation for these moves, the union and staff have been notified. As youth are moved to other locations, the same level of staffing or near the same level of staffing has to remain at Los Padrinos. The judge has been very clear that this is all predicated on reasonably being able to come into compliance quickly. And since the reason we're out of compliance at Los Padrinos has been staffing, the whole notion has been that if you reduce the number of young people at Los Padrinos, keep the level of staffing, that will resolve. That means is that more staff is going to be needed at the locations where we're moving the young people without pulling too many folks from Los Padrinos. To that end, notices have been sent to staff in the field of their potential reassignment to one of those locations. Additionally, some staff may move with the youth in an effort to have some continuity of care. Those notices have also been provided.
Do you have numbers? Can you break that down a little bit? Because what you're saying makes sense, that you need to keep the numbers at Los Padrinos. That's one of the major issues. And also, I think of CVK as the main example. You're seeking to increase the population by at least double, based on the last numbers we got, right, of the number of girls and gender expansive youth that would be proposed to move to CVK. So I guess it would be really helpful. I know it's based on daily population, what your staffing numbers are, but other than going and finding officers from the field, how do you plan to staff up CVK while also maintaining the current level at Los Padrinos in an effort to come into compliance?
Well, there is no other place to pull staff from other than the field. That is the last remaining place. CVK is probably a good example because it's not simple math across the board. If you go from 17 young people to 50, you don't use that same ratio to increase the number of staff because, for example, at CVK, you were almost at a 1-to-1 ratio already. And so you already have more staff assigned there than for the number of young people. It's one of the reasons why this change was necessary in order to be more efficient in our utilization of our resources, both in people and location. But it will require an increase. That we already have a list of volunteers that are currently working with the girls in Commerce that are willing to move with them to the new location. So it may be a mix of augmenting staff that's already there with those that are already working with them, and then they move over. So my intent is to seek volunteers first that have familiarity with the caseload to the extent possible. And then after that, we fall back on seniority and inverse seniority from folks in the field. Okay, if we go to the next slide. So as a point in time to have a snapshot of the total youth that we have going from Los Padrinos to the other locations, if you take a look at this slide, it answers some of what we were discussing. Pine Grove was of major interest to the court because it's outside of our system and it is an opportunity to have vocational training. And so in addition to the proposed plan, this was added to it, a report back to make sure that we are completely utilizing the opportunities that we have for young people to go to Pine Grove and essentially exit one of our facilities to a place where they could get vocational training in wildland firefighting. That had already taken place at Nydorf. So every young person at Nydorf had already been screened on whether they would be eligible for a Pine Grove program. And I always remind folks this is a voluntary program. So we really are trying to do everything we can to make it as enticing as possible, yet being realistic, and the young people ultimately make that decision whether they want to attend or not. We have not had great success in doing so. The court added something that has not been done before, and we have now completed, which is assessing folks that would likely be SYTF that are still at Los Padrinos, so that before the judge sends them as SYTF, I said that correctly, to Nydorf, that we would know whether they would be eligible and interested in going to Pine Grove instead. I'm not sure that's exactly how the state program was created. There has to be a disposition first, but this at least would give us an idea, and perhaps between the public defender and the DA, they would have alternatives. Those assessments also have taken place. And so there will be a report back to the court on the 3rd, and then we'll be back in court on the 18th of July to give updates on how this plan is going.
Have you done the assess or expressed interest with the LP predisposition youth, or you haven't brought it to them yet?
No, I think that's just whether they're eligible or not.
Okay.
We leave that to the other folks involved, public defender, the folks network. They may be more successful. Another directive from the court, and I think even from this body, you expressed great interest in with these dynamic changes at Kilpatrick. Visitation is important. How would that be handled? So we're taking a look at a variety of methods to make sure that the young people's network is able to contact them. I lean heavily on the ability to use technology to have folks do FaceTime visits and such more often, in addition to having transportation programs. Now, transportation programs that are already in existence for other locations are, for example, we've had other departments share that for DMH, they have limited transportation they have for folks when they're receiving treatment. We learned from JCOD that they're using vouchers for private company transportation. And then we've invited DYD if they were able to enter into contracts to do that as well. Probation has done this in the past, and it's not out of the norm to utilize our own vans and set them up at probation sites and transport folks. That might be a part of the solution. I think I would rather allow a little bit more independence from the families and their ability to get there. And so I'm leaning more toward the voucher program, but we're leaving all options open at this time.
Is there a timeline for when, let's say, the vouchers maybe would be implemented?
Well, we try to start that as soon as possible after the moves. We wouldn't do that before. And it's possible that there's overlap here. We may have to say, the move comes quickly because it's required by the court, in which case we may set up locations and times for our staff to transport folks for visitation while the contract goes through.
And sorry, when we were talking about vouchers, that was vouchers for families. I noticed here also partnering with community-based organizations. Are there already contracts or pots of funding available for the CBOs to facilitate this?
Yeah, we don't have any. That's why we've invited our partners to jump in here on this. I would love for there to be a CBO that steps forward and says, we already do this, all we need is the funding, or for DYD to say this is something we can take on, or to simply take on the JCOD model. I would rather this not be a probation employee function. As you can imagine, there's a number of reasons for that. One of them being we're already short-staffed. Secondarily, I just don't think that needs to be a core function and comfort level for families to be doing that. If there's a better way to do that, I'd love for someone other than probation to jump in and do that. I'm certainly anticipating providing a good portion of that funding. But in the absence of anyone stepping forward, we'll proceed as I described.
But at this point, there's no, I don't know if DYD or JCOD have communicated like, yes, we have these folks, or it's all just kind of hypothetical right now. Is that right?
Well, there are no contracts signed.
Okay.
We've communicated with all of the folks that I've mentioned. JCOD, when I refer to JCOD, I'm referencing their successful model and what they're doing.
Has anybody kind of estimated what kind of cost that would be, or how many pickup points it would be to take families up on Sunday, for example, to Kilpatrick?
No, I don't have a cost estimate. It's not, it's a relatively smaller population and not everybody would want to participate. So this isn't a large lift. It's not like the type of program where I would have to get creative and seek funding or ask for additional funding or anything like that.
Yeah. Commissioner Ship.
Yeah, so if they are meeting at like probation locations, will probation staff from those locations be the ones up driving them to Kilpatrick potentially? Like, I know like with our field offices, we already super short staffed because of the deployment. So how would that work?
Yeah, we would use staff that we're super short on. I mean, that's the bottom line. In all likelihood, we try to use transportation officers that do this and have additional certification. We'd have to, because it's on weekends, either use things like overtime to make sure that we're still getting our transportation to court. And yeah, it's an additional challenge, yes.
We're going to go on to the next slide.
I covered that one.
You already talked about. You can go to the next one, Jennifer.
With respect to, I think we mentioned that there would be community engagement, if nothing else, at this juncture to explain what the plan is. Initially, it had been anticipated that we would have town hall meetings or locations that we could take input and it could help shape some of the decisions being made. Then, of course, things shifted and we already had an order. We kept the engagement simply to get feedback from folks and if nothing else to explain what's happening and what could be anticipated. Those have taken place. DYD took the lead in setting up the locations and holding the meetings.
What has the feedback been?
Well, I think you're going to have maybe the director of DYD here later on. I believe he said in open session with the board that he would be preparing a formal report for the board. So maybe he'll have some insight.
Thank you.
Sorry, but I think it was Ms. Roman who was at our last, or one of our last Probation Oversight Commission meetings, where she had stated that there were already conversations happening with CBOs to provide programming at CVK. Can you provide an update on the status of that and who might be, who might have signed up and what the status is of that?
Yeah, that's a separate endeavor. That was probation alone, meeting with the CBOs and having, they also call town hall meetings for CBOs, and they had a web page that recently was put up on what to expect if you have a contract, what you should be doing, etc. I couldn't give you specifics on which CBOs or what is happening, but that is, yes, that began prior to this endeavor that we just described. It continues, and it's our director of programming under Roman that's dealing with that.
Okay. I ask because I know on June 6th, the BSCC sent a letter regarding the reinspection of Kilpatrick to you and other folks from probation management, asking for additional information as to a number of things, but including the daily schedule for education programs, exercise, and rec. That was on June 6th. So I don't know if you've already responded to that request for information in terms of what the programming will be, but it sounds like maybe you don't have that information today.
I mean, the future programming, what's anticipated to be the programming at Kilpatrick after they move?
Yeah, based on, I imagine, conversations that you've had with folks who are willing to travel to
Yeah.
Kilpatrick.
Yeah, no, I don't have that.
Okay. Have you responded to that letter to the BSC, or to that request for information from the BSCC from June 6th?
Yeah, I don't believe we have anything outstanding for the BSCC. I'd have to double check.
Okay.
I do have a question. So, I know you had town halls in each district, but I feel like, for SD3, I believe it was in the Valley area. Have you talked to the community inside of Malibu? I know for the last few years, the POC has recommended expanding Kilpatrick, but we kept hearing that, that the people of Malibu may not have wanted. That's what we hear from probation staff. So have you talked to the community of Malibu about you expanding the population of probation and got their thoughts on it, since it has been an issue in the past?
I want to be careful here. So we have engaged the city of Malibu as well as the mayors and the city administrators in each of the locations that are affected or where we have facilities. So we have met with Malibu. We're scheduled to meet with them again. It's an ongoing conversation. But in terms of like, if you're thinking like a town hall meeting with the residents, no, we've not done that. We're essentially leaving that to the city managers themselves. We're available to them if that's what they like. That's not been one of the requests so far. We simply give them information, and I suppose they're disseminating that. Just to close the loop, and perhaps not, we have submitted the requested documents to BSCC.
Or Kilpatrick. Sorry. So then you do have a sense of programming and which providers will be providing the kind of specialized programming that you envisioned for the girls and gender expansive youth that you plan to move to Kilpatrick?
Yeah, the proposal. Yeah, I hesitated in saying closing the loop because of the follow-up question. So we'll have to give you a copy.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
The other area of interest has been a concern for the pregnant youth that we have and how they would be treated. Those conversations continue with our partners, county partners that actually provide for that care. And if you look here, it just gives you a little bit of background in terms of how many we're talking about. always stapled these. I go from right to left. No, it's okay. I'll get to it eventually. Okay, human resources update. Look, this is one of the most difficult parts, which is an ongoing conversation of there's no shortage of attempt to hire more folks. When we talk about having insufficient number of staff, it's not due to failure of hiring attempts. It's not due to failure of our training team. It's not because we're not looking at alternate sources of employees. We've hired an outside agency to do recruiting. It's a very experienced agency. They put things on billboards. They do all. Additionally, our team has continued to go out and do fairs. It's just a painful area because at least once a week, somebody approaches me with an idea on how to recruit. And then I have to make us both sad by saying, oh no, we're doing that. It's just not netting the number of people and interests that you would think would normally come. There could be a number of reasons for that. And I ask folks to not underestimate the fact that with the amount of news coverage that takes place, putting an incredibly negative light on what's happening in LA County probation, that's not exactly where somebody wants to go work. And that definitely has an impact. And trying to explain what the opportunities are and the fact that you could be part of the change is awfully tough when you're trying to entice someone to come work for you. Additionally, this is a tough market, especially for law enforcement agencies. And we wouldn't be at the top of that list necessarily. If folks actually knew what is possible as a probation officer and what we're actually looking for, that's what we're trying to do, I think they would come. But, so one of the things that I've done since arriving here is really explore the utilization of our different classifications. I know I've mentioned here before, but one of the big pushes that we've had is on the DPO2 TNC series, which really is looking for folks that are coming with LCSW, LPCC, LMFT, that might be a different pathway than simply folks that are looking to go through the Law Enforcement Academy. You had a question?
Commissioner Harris, followed by Commissioner Meredith. Welcome.
So you want to go now? No, go ahead. This is a public meeting. Can you tell us what the opportunities are? Can you tell the public and us what the opportunities are for a probation officer with the department to fulfill what you believe is the mission of the department?
Well, I know the mission to be, we're not looking for a traditional law enforcement entry-level person. That's not the case here. What we do is we guide and we model for folks to be the best person that they can be during the toughest moment in their life. That's both juvenile and adults. So what we're really looking for is extraordinarily emotionally mature folks that have a passion for being an agent of positive change in someone else's life. That's who we're looking for. We're not looking for folks that already know how to place handcuffs on someone. We can take care of that. We'll train. Are you committed to seeing people for who they are, for who they don't know they can be in the worst moment in their life? That's who we're looking for. That means that we want folks that have some life experience, that understand how to work with folks from diverse background, who themselves have had some experiences that have led them to some insight. And then they have to be committed to being trained professionally. This is not, we're not looking for paraprofessionals. We want folks that understand that we've elevated our deputy probation officer series for the entry level to really be somebody with a bachelor's degree. We have entry level for folks with a bachelor's degree, entry level for folks with master's degree. And we're looking with folks that have a lot of life experience, understanding. They really want to help folks make the right decision in their lives, to really be a steward, a navigator for them on how to do something different in their lives and be there for them. The specifics on the classifications we have on our on our boards.
Yeah.
But we also want to work with the folks that we have and folks that maybe don't have that bachelor's degree. And so we're working to have a bachelor's completion program so that folks that really have the experience and maybe they meet all those qualifications, but they haven't quite finished the bachelor's degree, we want to have an option for them to do it with us.
Do you feel, I heard you talk about the media and some of the reporting that's been done on myriad issues. I mean, I think we say this at every meeting, but, you know, Los Padrinos is still out of compliance. It's been out of compliance for 6+ months. There's, you know, the reporting is on some of the major issues is very, very accurate, right? It doesn't mean that it's going into depth about who the people are in the facilities. I'm not saying that, but some of the major issues. Do you take any leadership or responsibility in some of the, you know, morale issues that the staff continually come to this meeting and make public comment that's impacting the department, particularly with, you know, deployment and running a department where people, you know, I met at a facility a couple of weeks ago, someone who's been in the department for a long time, has a, you know, is in the field and is on their 4th deployment in the facility, and they've done it. You know, they made it clear, like, I'm going to do it. I'm committed to the department, but I'm really unhappy about it. What would you say to that? You know, I understand you're trying to get things into compliance, but there's also, you know, some really important units, child trafficking, like those things have been decimated. We heard from, I don't remember who it was, not Mr. Nieto, maybe Mr. Nieto a couple months ago about, you know, some of the adult field services that aren't being addressed. And I wonder what your take is on the decisions that you've made to, you know, decimate some of these field services in order to focus on a pretty limited number of detained youth and trying to bring juvenile facilities into compliance.
Well, the reporting is not accurate. I think that's part of the problem. There's a kernel of truth, which is not disputed by me. I'm not an apologist. When something wrong or an injustice has taken place, you won't hear excuses from me. But the reporting by the media has been anything but accurate. As a matter of fact, it's crossed over into lies. I have personally attempted to correct that information, and they simply refuse to do it. And so it's one thing to say, Los Padrinos is out of compliance. That's a true statement. But then to follow that up, I give all the reasons why that is that are untrue, really make it more difficult for the staff and make it more difficult for folks to be able to actually make those corrections.
Can I just stop for a minute? Are you referring to the reasons that you've listed in your ongoing litigation trying to appeal the BSCC's decision? Are
No.
those some of the inaccuracies that you're listing?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm simply saying by complete fabrication or by, let me give you a better example. So I and this department has been charged time and time again by having, just pick up the paper, by this continuing slew of illegal activity by officers at Los Padrinos being the underlying cause for us to be out of compliance. Is that true? That's not listed anywhere as a cause for, so it's the conflation of separate issues that really confuse the public and they confuse our employees. The truth of the matter is that since I've arrived, there have been policy changes, there's been a structural change, and really it was the department that uncovered potential wrongdoing, sent it to outside investigators that ultimately resulted in 30 indictments. That is a completely different set of facts than saying that this department, myself and these employees are wrongdoers and that's the reason why we're out of compliance. So 2 completely different things. When we move over to the non-compliance issues because lack of staffing, and when we jump from we have lack of staffing and I'm decimating the field, that's not the full story, is it? The full story is that we have enough employees that have been hired, if you simply take the numbers, to both do field services and to have enough people in all of our facilities. The department has not erred in the number of employees that it has hired, but the truth of the matter is that an insufficient number of employees are either willing or able to come to work on a regular basis for us to meet those mandates. And so it's not that I don't have an understanding for the importance of field services. It's that there are limited options in being able to carry out what is mandated statutorily. It's not that I have a lack of empathy for the field officer who is good at what they do, but have had to be sent into juvenile hall time and time again and have their shifts changes and it's affected their ability to get adequate daycare for their kids because they're held over. I understand that. I don't want that to occur, but I also don't have a magical way of resolving that. And decisions have to be made so that we continue to execute our statutory mandates. And so when I talk about morale, what I ask for is a very clear understanding of the challenges that the probation staff have. I don't need another lecture on how morale is low, not by this body, but by folks on a constant basis that want to talk about, and what are you going to do? My response is, how are you going to help me and those staff members? There are concrete things that can be done to assist them, but they aren't a simple policy decision. I wish I could, through policy or by the use of the budget, change the underlying facts of how many trained officers are available to be in the facility on every given day. There are things that the union and those that purport to be friends of the union can do to assist employees if they're no longer able to perform the duties. I think what has happened, if we're going to be honest with each other, is that this county has, probably for decades, counted on there being a shift of probation officer. So if there's anything uncomfortable, you simply say, wait it out. There's going to be another chief. Don't worry about that. So when we say things like, no, you can't simply call off of work when it's a holiday or when there is a sports team, that's not going to be allowed, then simply say, that's today. Wait it out. There's going to be another chief soon enough. Or when there's a policy that says, look, I know this is painful, but we don't have any other facilities. And the only way, from my perspective, we're going to be able to meet the needs of these young people is to do these shifts. And simply, instead of simply saying, okay, how do we make sure that this is done correctly? How do we minimize the impact? That's one way to approach it. Or simply say, we're going to fight it because there's going to be another chief soon enough, and we'll call for another chief. That's the ongoing problem.
Commissioner Meredith.
This is probably more of a statement than a question. I know last meeting we had HR here talking about 4850. And there's one particular employee that I know that's a veteran employee of the organization, dedicated, normally in the field, had been assigned to work at Los Padrinos in the halls and got injured. And we're now 3 months, because this happened in March, and Sedgwick has not gotten back. And I know you and I've talked about, in my personal view, the ineptness of Sedgwick. This is probably more of a CEO board motion for them to deal with. But if we could get them on time, getting our people back to work would help, number one. And we have people often, they're not even on 4850, they're on their own dime, barely making it. So they got to start looking for occupations elsewhere. And then when they do come to work from the field and they go into a facility, a lot of times they're put on the line, and the line person is given a special to do, which is not necessarily appropriate. So I'm just looking for some suggestions here. It's like I said in a question, I know I have a real frustration for all those that don't come to work because they're calling in for a holiday or sick, or I'm too scared. Well, if you're too scared, I know you guys hate when I say this, get a job elsewhere. Because I know there's hardworking people like you, Thomas, out there working in these facilities that have great relationships. I'm just not sure how we get them either off the books or get them back to work. And that's where I'm looking for suggestions, and that includes for the unions.
And to be clear, we do have incredibly hardworking folks that are really carrying their job and 2 other employees' jobs on their back. And they're showing up and they're working overtime and they're getting held over. And it's understandable that levels of injury increase, level of burnout increase, or they simply find other jobs if they don't see that there's an end to that. You can't fix a problem unless you understand the components that are really causing it. One of those has been the disability management program that you're referencing, and the fact that it could take so long that really you're either losing an employee or the inverse, an employee wants to come back to work and that doesn't happen. I acknowledge that the department was incapable of managing that program, and that has been shifted over to the Department of Human Resources. There's an entirely different department now managing that entire process in order to be more effective and efficient. They contracted out a portion of that. I think some of that is positive in that they're going all digital, so it's much faster, better for the employee to see, and everyone involved. I was going to start describing it, but I realize I'm not from HR. It's imperfect and still yet to see what type of gains we'll have in terms of how quickly those cases will be processed. I know that what they're charged with now is the backlog. So I think it would be different if somebody files today and goes through that new DHR process is one thing, but there's this backlog of hundreds and hundreds of cases that, I don't know how quickly they're going to be processed.
Well, and I'm going to go back to the 4850. And of course, I come from the world of municipal law enforcement. But the CEO was here when we asked that question. I said, what if a deputy sheriff is shot or a probation officer shot? Oh, we're right on it. Well, it should be the same for any injury. That's obviously a job-related injury. They shouldn't be on their own dime. They should be in that 4850 time. And I know this is not in your world. This is at a higher level. I hope the CEO's office is listening. But it's frustrating because we can get those people back to work. And if there are people that are committing the fraud, well, in the past, when prior chiefs, we've actually brought in the Department of Insurance and went after them for the fraud. So I'm just tossing it out because we do have great employees and they're frustrated. And I talk to them, they go, how do we get these people back to work? And then when they say they're too scared to come to work, well, if they were coming to work, there'd be no need to be scared because we'd have enough people. I'm done with my soapbox. Thank you.
Commissioner Ship.
I do commend you on all of these outreach attempts. I think, this is pushing as far as it can go. I do have an extra question. So what I'm not seeing on here is like community-based organizations. There are a bunch of housings up and down California, a bunch of community-based organizations who work with the same exact population, who live in housing with the same exact population, not do what probation does, but have similar experience to that. Are you outreaching to those partners who do own the housing or maybe work with the same population and trying to bring some of those people on?
No, I think you're right. The greatest partnerships that we have are with nonprofits. Typically, we have a lot of contracts with a lot, and we're constantly open to vetting new ones. So if there's, for some reason, somebody in the LA County area that we've not connected with, please send them our way because we are always looking. Going back to the report, this might be a good segue, is one of the other requirements had been from the judge, it's a perception that there had been a backlog in terms of step downs for SYTF.
Mhm.
And the request, I said request sounds nicely. The order was to essentially report back on the increased number of beds. We've done that. So that has gone from, we had Boys Republic, SYTF, 10 beds. Now there's going to be Amity, another 10. And now there's going to be another one for the girls. So those are examples of, if they're out in the community and they can provide those, we'll enter into new contracts and expand for them.
What I was specifically asking, like, are you using those partners to recruit people? Right?
Oh,
like those
for
people
recruitment.
Yeah,
Oh,
they do the work.
that's good. There used to be a day when that was a typical source of recruitment for juvenile hall. Somebody would be working in a facility, they'd interact with our officers, and then eventually they would come on. It's a good suggestion. I don't know that we've specifically targeted them. It's a good suggestion.
Commissioner Terry.
I think you touched on this, but are you also working with like MSW programs? So for example, when you were talking about people having that lens and kind of that background and expertise in working with people, those programs have the internship model that they use where they place students in facilities or, any agencies, and then, they can kind of transition from there. Is that something you all have considered?
Yeah, and the department always has had some interns. This is just an expansion to say, if you have your associate number, we want to hire you now and pay you for this entire period, and we're going to do that. This is a slightly easier portion because we know the schools and we can reach out to them, but that's not all the positions that we have. Part of it is budgetarily. There's only a certain number of positions that are for those, which I've expanded. Now we need to fill in the DPO ones. That's really the number one area where we'd love to be able to recruit more.
Commissioner Terry, I was invited to attend I was going to call it a graduation, but it's really not, like the culmination of the internship program for the year, maybe 3 weeks ago. And it was fantastic. Lots of really exactly the kind of folks you're talking about who had completed their school year internship with the process, and most of whom said that they were applying for the department. Part of the reason I applied is exactly what you just said, that I went to see who had applied, is that they were the kind of people you're describing, Chief. And so I'll make sure that next year, and if they do one at the middle of the semester, you all are invited, as I think you would be impressed, as you said, with who had completed those internships and might be interested in applying for the department.
So just a couple of questions with the staffing. Retention of the new staff. When I'm in facilities, I always talk to the younger new staff, and they share the number of colleagues that came in with them that are no longer there. Do you have an idea of what the retention percentage is right now?
I don't. It's something we report often. I'm sure we can have Deanna give it to you.
Is she going to be here?
No, she's not here today. So the department has tried a variety of things, what they call a mentoring program. My push has been to the training unit to develop a formalized, similar to the field training programs that you have under post, where once you're released from the academy, you have a continuation of that training on site with someone observing you and modeling and testing specific areas. It's typically 10 weeks. And then you have 2 different field training officers with you. We're attempting to do that same thing. It should be no surprise. That's awfully tough to do when you're short on staff. So rather than the full 10-week one, I believe in this last academy, we started an abbreviated one. It's not going to be the full 10 weeks, but in which when you're released from the academy, you're going with someone to the facility. In this case, it'll be a training officer from the training unit, and they'll be with you for some weeks so that we make sure that we don't lose you because you feel lost or scared or don't know what to do or any of those things.
So another question is, I was at Los Padrinos on Memorial Day morning, and at about 9 o'clock, I had asked just for a snapshot of what staffing looked like, the number of staff that were there, what percentage were holdovers, what percentage were overtime, what percentage were deployed, reassigned. Is that something that you're getting daily to see if there's patterns of days there's more overtime needed than other days?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to answer this question. That at differing times, we've gone as far as to open the Emergency Operations Center to per shift review that information, down to leaving it to the superintendent on site in the shift. So we've tried all sorts of models in terms of that tracking. What I can tell you is that the overtime hour expenditure is through the roof. I mean, the utilization of that is not it's not something that you could do long term, and yet here we are. It's been utilized for a couple of years. I sent out a directive, I think last year, saying that if someone's going to be held over more than 16 hours, that I need to be contacted directly. There are attempts at trying to manage this. At the end of the day, the the command staff on that shift do whatever they have to do to get to that right number. And so it makes it difficult because it goes from holding folks over to calling folks off of the seniority list to simply calling friends and saying, I need you to do me a solid and come in and work this shift.
It seems like there's a vicious cycle. You have people calling out because they're afraid of being held over. And then they create a holdover for the person who actually showed up.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I'm trying to figure out, how do you convey to the personnel that this is part of the problem? It's kind of self-inflicted at some level.
It is self-inflicted. I don't want folks to think that we are unsophisticated in knowing how to schedule. Over the course of the last 2 years, we have attempted all sorts of things to avoid this. One of them has been adding a shift, right? One way is you add a shift so that you have predictability in how to fill that and you don't change your normal. Another one has been trying to schedule an overtime shift. If you know when you're going to do your double, for example, then I plan around it and maybe there's less call-ins. We've everything from, well, if you tell me what unit I'm going to go to and who I work with, I'm less likely to call out. I've listened to all of the suggestions that are things that we can actually do, suggestions short of just don't send me, find someone else. But if it's actionable, we'll try it. And I can tell you, I can't identify that any of them has improved anything. You still have the same levels of call out by bureaus, by classification. So I want folks to stop the blame game as well. This isn't a bureau versus bureau, field versus this facility, supervisors versus, the behavior seems to be pretty prevalent regardless of where you're assigned or what your classification is.
So, and my final question is because it's difficult getting a real answer. We visit field offices and it's kind of hard to tell how many people are really, really assigned there and working on that day. So you get the narrative that it's a ghost town, that nobody's there. How do we square that? Is it possible to just share data or information suggesting that, okay, Pomona Valley today, we have this many employees, and if you go there, this is what you should find, no matter what people say. Now, we might find extra because what I'm hearing is some deputy probation officers from the field on their days off are popping in to do work and keep their caseload kind of above water. But is it possible just to get some verification so we're not part of the problem of promoting that false narrative that they're completely ghost towns?
Yes, I think the best way is once we make this move, this also is on the back of an assessment that has been conducted on what the minimum number of staffing to continue the operations is. So that's going to be a static number according to the field population and those functions. And then you will be able to see the exact number of field staff still remaining. What I'll tell you is it's probably somewhere in between. It is true that we probably have pockets in which on any given day, if one person is sick, one person's in court, one person's in training, that if you show up that day, it looks pretty empty. That doesn't mean that it's been completely forgotten and we're not tracking and we aren't using overtime to get those reports fixed.
That's it. One more and then we can
Okay.
move on to the slides.
Earlier, you had said the county has relied on there being a new chief to kind of, accept the mandate and know that like the tune will change shortly. I just feel like the Board of Supervisors has really had your back in that they gave you these emergency powers last December and really tried to invest in your ability to stay on. So when you say the county, can you be specific? Like, are you talking about the union? Are you talking about the Board of Supervisors? Who are you talking about?
Yeah, you're asking me if I'm publicly complaining about my bosses? Yeah.
I don't know what you mean by when you say the county
that's
has
not the-
relied.
No. We were talking about behavior of employees and some of the partners. And I think that part of what has occurred is clear to me, not simply because I came to the conclusion, because this is a great county and folks have fantastic freedom of expression and they know it. And so they come to me and they say, hey, look, we're just waiting you out. And this is what happened to the last guy and the guy before and the guy. They're historians of what has happened in the county. I'm talking about what folks' expectation is that dictates some of their behavior. And I think, yeah, part of it is union, part of it is employees themselves, part of it is the folks that we have business dealings with.
Okay.
I wasn't referencing the Board of
Okay.
Supervisors.
Yeah, that clarification was helpful.
If I could just, if you go to page 11, just to maybe give a sense of what we're discussing with respect to the DPO1s. So for example, just in the DPO1 exam, if you take a look at this relatively short period, there were 3,346 applications received. You would think that with that many applications, I could tomorrow be able to just hire more people. But from these numbers, we're to the point where I'm holding academies with 9 people, 10 people. I can't even wait to have a full academy of 30. In order to grab them, they're going to go somewhere else. That we're unable to do that. The other charge that has remained against as well, people leave because you're taking too long. That between the time that you submit and part of this is for me important to differentiate between fact and fiction. What is really happening? What can we fix? In this case, our hiring team is faster and pushes people through the process faster than any of the probation departments around here. I challenge any of the law enforcement agencies around here. I mean, they have it down to being able to process you and get you through that exam through 60 days and then through the whole background probably closer to 8 months. That's faster than almost everywhere else. That didn't used to be the case. That's the case now because wherever we can draw even a little efficiency, we're doing so. It's not solving the whole problem, but it's one more area where, okay, that's not the thing that's holding us back. I think you want me to go through all the DPO2 that they're here. If you do have questions, I'm happy to ask. I'll just end on the, because I think there had been some questions on the memorandum of understanding through the chiefs of police. So the fiscal administrator for that was selected as the city of Pomona by the chiefs of police. And we'd previously asked with respect to how much money had initially been put in the pot for that. So that's here. Any questions on that MOU? I'd be happy to address.
Commissioners, during this presentation, the chief has kind of weighed into and touched on item number 5. So I think that if we have any questions regarding personnel matters, maybe we just ask them now and then we'll go to public comment.
I think what you're suggesting, Chair Mundo, is that we merge items number 4 and 5 into this
Merge.
discussion. Sorry.
Okay, no objections. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll go back to some decorum here. Oh, you're getting off easy.
No objection.
Okay, no objection. All right. So any questions regarding human resources and how they're impacting the depopulation plan?
What was the total, I'm trying to make sure I'm clear, what was the total number of days or months it takes from application to hire?
I'd have to go back and we'll get from Deanna the breakdown on how many, but it's probably closer to 8 months.
8 months. Okay.
That is through background, through everything, through, yeah. The part where they have been able to be I'm pretty astounded is the part where you put an application in and you're now on an exam. You now have a score that's about 60 days.
Commissioner Ship?
Is there a way, I know that the usual process is to go and work in the halls and then you become a field officer, but for somebody who may have worked at CDCR at some point or probation for another county, can they streamline to the field, especially since that's a big area we'll be lacking when we deploy people inside?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to get the union to picket against me because if I were to bring people in and send them directly to the field and not to the halls like they're having to go, I think it would be fundamentally unfair. But I'll say this. I did put out an exam for DPO2s with a $24,000 incentive for laterals. The notion would be these are folks that I already know are going to pass the background. They already have the training. I don't have to put them through training except for site-specific training. And they're coming with experience. So I did put out a DPO2 field officer $24,000 incentive and received exactly zero interest. So had they come, they were going to work in the halls first.
Commissioner Kakani?
Just to follow up on the impact on field services. So we're talking to a lot of public defenders, or I'm talking to a lot of public defenders who are sharing requests for continuances by your staff because there simply aren't staff in the field to write reports, provide updates to the court. So I'm curious, are you tracking that? Are you, I don't know if that's something that you're aware of and if you're asking for numbers related to that, just so you have a sense of how this is impacting, I guess, young folks and adults, but my frame of reference is young folks who are in the community.
Yeah, and I've met with the courts with respect to where we're falling behind or when the quality is maybe less than where it should be. Part of this assessment to figuring out who we need to keep, what the ultimate minimum is actually going to result in an increase in certain areas. So we have cut down too short in some areas. There'll be an increase in those areas, especially for reports to the courts, while a reduction in others. You know, it's complicated. You're trying to be fair to staff, but staff have different levels of expertise in the work that they're doing. And so in this round, what we're trying to do is to take account of that. So for example, you can't simply replace somebody in a unit because they have higher seniority, when in reality, you know, it takes 6 months to really get good at writing reports. So we're trying to remedy that, and we're likely a little short in some areas, or were.
But I guess you're not necessarily tracking that to see how many cases continuances are being requested on.
We track a lot of things that, you know, that's, you're talking on the adult side?
I was actually talking about the juvenile side.
Oh, the juvenile side? Yeah, I'd have to check with what level of specificity. But yeah, they do
Okay.
track that. That's part of every supervisor's job.
Okay. I mean, it was a while ago that Miss Epps was here who shared that she was not aware of that. And obviously, again, that was, gosh, I don't even know, maybe over 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so she had asked that I share what I received. And it was just like a redacted, we're requesting a continuance because we don't have
Yeah.
anyone in the field to write this report,
Oh, yeah.
which essentially means that a young person is not being connected to services, is not being connected to the people that would both keep them safe and keep the community safe. And so every time we get these urgent incident notifications where either a young person has passed or an adult probationer has passed, it's hard not to wonder, was there a probation officer assigned to this person who was supporting them and kind of engaging in the mission that you referenced at the beginning of this meeting. So it feels really important to track those things to understand not just the immediate implication, but the the larger kind of impact of not meeting the mission that you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't want you to confuse. If a department head doesn't know something, it doesn't mean it's not happening. I think that's happened here before. Just because I have a look of wonderment does not mean that there are many things that, thank goodness, occur on a daily basis. Tracking has to be done from the first line supervisor forward. That's how you determine when to give overtime, what due dates there are in the system. So that should be happening. I took it to mean, is it like on our comp stat, right? One of the items that we had, which I'd be happy to get back. But since that time, we have met with the courts. We are aware of some of those areas, and we are doing an adjustment on increasing staff on some of those areas.
And then just as it relates to the new hires, are you tracking also, you, not being you specifically, the department, tracking kind of how long those folks are staying, whether they're staying, like, just like the retention piece?
Yeah, human resources tries to do exit interviews, figure out the reasons why they're leaving, see if there's something we could have done. I haven't looked at it in a while. When I first looked at it, it was much less than the perception. So the perception was that, look, almost everybody's leaving. That was not the case.
Okay.
It was much closer to the norm in law enforcement, where folks leave. You know, it looks pretty exciting in the academy, but not so much when you start doing the work. It was pretty close to that. I think since then it's gone up a little bit, but we'll get that from Deanna. They do a really good of tracking, and then as much as they can, the whys.
And she did a good job the last time with providing that.
Yeah.
And again, it's, you know, when you're meeting and talking to the probation officers and DSOs that do show up to work, it's a limited viewpoint, right? So being able to kind of square it's always nice. So the narrative at least stays true, whether it's good or bad.
Right.
So before we release the chief to go back and fix all these problems by 5 o'clock today, any other questions?
Just have
Commissioner
one quick
Prater?
question about the number of, see the MOU with Pomona is going to be starting in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks. How many officers will be sort of helping with sort of like field supervision?
Oh, yeah, good question. So Pomona will be the administrator. Every police agency in the county can utilize this. So it's not just for the police department of Pomona. They're simply the administrator for the funding. And it's up to every chief. So every chief will determine the utilization. So what we have is a pot of money set aside, a type of activity, and then they submit the information, the contacts that they've had, and then they're reimbursed.
Is there a goal or aim for the number you're hoping? So right now, if it's kind of like an open call to anyone who can assist us in that regard, is there a number that you're hoping, a target that you're hoping to hit with the number of folks that we can get?
No, because my target would be higher than my funding. So what we've essentially said is, look, this is really a test. If the number one thing that comes back is better information sharing, in other words, if all that happens is that I get more timely information to make a case management decision on the probation side, then it's a win. And then we'll take a look back. But the idea would be to ultimately, if you said, look, pretend like you don't live in reality, you're just designing this on paper, then my goal would be for all 22, 23,000 folks that are in the field, they get at least one contact, right? That's not the way it's going to work, nor should it, because some folks are going to need more than others and it's going to be dependent. But the idea that we have is essentially, we don't want, because we're in turmoil, we don't want anyone falling through the cracks, needing a contact, needing a referral, and we're unable to do that because of our staffing. So that's really the idea of, why engaging.
Okay.
Commissioner Kakani?
When you were last before the POC, I think you had left early, but there was a motion that was passed. LP is still operating, in my opinion, unlawfully, right? As of December 12th, not only were you out of compliance, we were at a position where we had exceeded all statutory timelines, I think in Welfare and Institutions Code 209. And And to me, as you're talking and you're like, we've got a limited number of folks, and we're not moving anyone from LP. So that means we're taking more folks from the field to staff up, whether it's Barry J, whether it's CVK. We know that the staff doesn't love that. So it doesn't feel sustainable to me. And it doesn't feel like we're paying enough attention to the depopulation of Los Padrinos. And I don't mean depopulation in terms of like moving them to different facilities, but I mean like decarceration. And I feel like there's been this narrative that like every young person in there is a 707B, violent, like needs to be there. And yet we've seen data now where a significant number of young folks who are inside of LP leave within 30 days. And so I think I had asked if there could be some sort of documentation or something provided about at the time it was 153 young folks who I think were at LP who were predispo. Like what that review was of their case files. Who was the group of folks who reviewed them? Who did they talk to? Did they talk to the folks providing programming? Did they talk to folks in the community to be like, what can we connect these young people to so that they can safely be released? Did we talk to their teachers? Did we talk to DMH? Like it just doesn't make sense to me that like only 2 folks were recommended for release of the case files reviewed, if that even, when we know that so many folks are coming in and out of LP every month and that we could actually reduce that population of young folks so that we're not operating a facility unlawfully and ultimately subjecting young folks and the staff who are doing their best to show up every day to really unsafe conditions that then permeate into case reports and the burden of which falls on young people. So I don't know if that information, if you have that.
Just quickly, at the June 9th meeting, there was a written response to part of that question that is attached, not to this agenda, but if members of the public want to see what the department responded in writing to partial, if you go to our website, poc.lacounty.gov, go to the June 9th agenda. It's called Probation's Written Responses or something very creative like that is how we titled it. And so part of those answers are there. And I don't mean to interrupt your question. I just want to make sure that the members of the public can know that there are some written responses to those questions.
Right. I think there's some written responses, but I don't know that it was actually like a complete breakdown. And I think when Ms. Roman was here, she indicated that there were folks who were looking at the case files, but again, like there's no standard against which those that review, or she wasn't able to share the standard against which that review was like based on, if there was a protocol, if there was a, yes, we, I don't know, just some additional context.
So in the simplest form, what would be the question?
Do you have a more complete response to how young people who are inside LP, how their like case files are being reviewed to determine if there is a way to safely depopulate and reduce the incarcerated youth population at LP beyond just like the 1 or 2, given again that we know that a lot of young folks are cycling in and out of LP on like a under 30-day basis.
So I don't concur that we're unlawfully in LP. I just need to make clear because this comes up time and time again. So it was non-compliant by BSCC. However, the case has been taken up by a local judge. As members of the bar, that is the decision maker and the enforcer of the law and the interpreter. In this particular case, the judge had an option to tell us to leave. Instead, what the judge said is this alternate depopulation plan. And so I think this is probably a good example of where we have a breakdown in communication, which is that's a very different place to start a conversation with the community at large by saying, you, a government entity, are committing a violation of the law. That starts a totally different sort of relationship and understanding and places to work with each other. That's not the case. I mean, there is oversight, and in this case, there is the local court that has this matter before them. Notwithstanding with respect to the assumption that we're overpopulated at LP because I'm choosing to detain young people that shouldn't be, is where we disagree. And time again, I've been here, and I think this is a little bit of where the conversation starts to go sideways. First of all, I don't know how you're concluding that off the top. It'd be easier if you pointed to me to the young people that you think are being over-detained, and I'll take a second look. I don't have more to add in terms of the process. The process is reviewed by the judges. And if you just take a look, I just have a completely different perspective. We could talk about making sure there's fidelity to the process, or that we're faster in the process, because 3 days could mean something to a young person. But to simply start by saying, look, we're just wholesale over detaining young people, we disagree. I don't believe that's the case. I look at other factors like the number of crimes, the population, to determine if we are just wholly out of sync with what should be happening here. That's just not the case. Many areas, I began by saying I'm not an apologist, many areas where we need to do better, too many to list. That's what I'm going to go do once I leave here, is continue to push that we do better. We do better in terms of the quality of the interactions we have with young people. We have to do better in terms of engaging. All of those things are true. But to simply, I can't just sit here and agree that this would be solved if we would just get on it and release more young people. That's not the case.
So I think it's time for us to allow the public to weigh in with live comment or written comment. Wendy, do we have any?
Yes, just to be clear, we are merging items 4 and 5 on the agenda. Item number 4 on the agenda is the update from the chief about BSCC compliance, the depopulation plan, the POC's depopulation plan. Item number 5 is a report on staffing, and the chief's PowerPoint presented some of the answers to the questions on staffing, and he has said that we can get data from Human Resources Director Deanna Carlisle for the other questions. So we will be taking public comment on both items number 4 and number 5. And there are no motions on the table for voting. So this will just be your chance to share your comments about what was shared, or ask questions, or give your thoughts to the commissioners and the chief. So we'll start in person, and you can just come up to the podium, and don't feel like you need to make a line. I won't cut you off. And if you're online, you can use the little raise your hand function on WebEx. Click the raise your hand button. If you are calling into WebEx, dial *3 on your phone, and that will put your phone number in the list. If you're on YouTube, you cannot make public comment. You need to join the WebEx in order to make public comment. I can't see the clock, but I think it exists.
And please stay on topic.
Yes.
We've been having a propensity for people doing infomercials and not really staying on topic. It's really important that we do that. We want to make sure that the chief is here to hear your thoughts and concerns. And if you do have a program that you want to promote, you can call the department or call DYD if they're willing to take your call and share what you have and all the good stuff.
Okay, thank you. I am hoping I'm going to hear the beep because I can't see the clock. So Diane says I should trust the process. Oh, I can't see the clock. Okay.
I'll try to
Welcome.
talk
Hi,
really
Adam.
fast too. I wrote a bunch down. I have a program that's currently at LP with Los Padrinos that is sponsored by DYD, but I want to make clear that I'm speaking just as Adam Summer. And I guess I'll respond to Millie and Guillermo's conversation from a second ago. I think by keeping these kids in for 130 days, you have no idea how many lives you're saving. Like, they have hot conflicts back home. Like, gunshots have gone off the day before, 2 days before. So by releasing them that quickly, kids, teenagers, they have a short attention span and they move on to the next thing and the next thing. But if you do that within 2 weeks and you put them in the exact same neighborhood, in the same situation, I think the consequences are dire. And at the same time, there's no benefit to probation in doing this, except for bad press. But really, I think it's a brave thing and a courageous thing and an intrepid thing to do, to say, okay, we continue to have bad press, a staff shortage, but we're going to save these kids' lives. And I think that's truly only something that you can, if you're in probation day after day, I think you can really see that. Really quickly, I think there can be policy shifts on policy or on protocol within LP. I think it's really irresponsible that we allow these kids who have just gotten in fights minutes before to go right back on the floor. And I know probation staff quits because of this, because they tell me that. It's very unsafe. And we don't have always ex-law enforcement or ex-armed forces, which would be amazing. We don't have the physical presence to deter this. Really quickly, I'm running out of time. I'd love to speak again. The rec areas have way too many places where these kids can hide out, and that's usually where stuff happens. Every single rec area does. That is a huge deterrent for probation because they can't be everywhere at once, and that's not their fault. Also, tort litigation is a massive deterrent right now. Everybody has awareness of how bad media attention has been towards juvenile correctional
Thank you.
officers. So, all right, sorry, but thank you.
Hi, Mr. Bell.
Oh, hello. That was a great comment. But I want to talk about the depopulation plan. We had a few town hall meetings. I went to the one at Rocky with Ms. Novak. She did a wonderful job, by the way. Good job, Ms. Novak. But I'm just comparing the information I'm getting from different meetings that we had, and just wanted to, ask the question of, I'm hearing about CVK. One thing I've heard was the officers there are going to stay where they're at, and the ones who work with the girls at Kirby are going to come over to CVK, and you're going to work with what you have. Then I hear that they're going to be all the women from Kirby and LP was going to be pulled to CVK, and the men were going to be going to Barry J. So, just a little conflict, and I wanted to see if you could clarify that for us as well. As far as the staffing levels, it is going to be hard. I'm going to debate the scared thing 100%, sir. I'm sorry. That's always going to be. I don't think people are fear of the kids. It'd be more fear of management, but not the fear of kids. I think people have lives, and their kids come first, and they do have to put their kids first above the job. But I think it would help, and I'm gonna talk directly to you, Chief. It would help if, when situations happen in the media, that we hear our chiefs say, our officers are excellent people, they're great work, and we not see the headline of the chief applauds the attorney general for what he did. Indictments do not mean guilt. So if we hear more of our chief saying that he supports his officers and they're all excellent jobs, I think that would help a lot, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you guys for having me. I wrote a little something. So my name is Rosalino Pavia. I'm the founder and program director of Who's for Justice, a community-based organization that brings mentorship and sports programming into Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall and Campus Kilpatrick. I'm here today as someone who spent 5 years in juvenile justice system from the age 16 to 21, and as someone who now walks back into these facilities several times a week to support our youth. The reason I'm making this public comment is because I want to highlight the probation officers who are doing their part to create a more humane, supportive environment for the young people in their care. We all know the system has serious problems. That's not up for debate. But it's also true that there are some people working inside these facilities who genuinely care and show up every day with compassion, consistency, and the willingness to do more than the bare minimum. And that matters. That's what makes a difference. When I was locked up, there were officers who saw us more than just a case number, who made sure we had clean clothes, enough food, and treated us with respect. That gave us a space to believe in something better. And I see that spirit in many of the staff I work alongside today. The way an officer shows up, whether they're angry or encouraging, can shape a whole unit's energy. That's why morale matters. That's why leadership matters. So I'm here to uplift those making the kind of impact. Thank you to the BMP department, Ms. Evans, Mr. Freeman, Ms. Wilder, Ms. Salim, Ms. Smith, Ms. Love, Director Ford, Supervisor Molina. Thank you to the officers on the ground, Ms. Rodriguez, Mr. Gonzalez, Ms. Ponce, Ms. West, Ms. Marquez, Ms. Romero, Mrs. Cisneros, Ms. Nunez, Ms. Alcaraz, Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Maples, and Supervisor Ms. Gonzalez. This isn't about ignoring what's broken. It's about recognizing that while we fight for a better system, we also need to support and collaborate with those on the inside who are trying to make the difference right now. Because these young people deserve every ounce of support we can give them from CBOs, from volunteers, and yes, from probation too. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm also hoping to address the staff retention similarly as Rosalino did, and staff appreciation. I had two versions. Hopefully I'll stay in time. Good morning. My name is Lauren, and I work with several CBOs providing services to youth in Los Padrinos, Barry J. Nidor, thank you, and Campus Kilpatrick. But I am speaking today on my own behalf. As a teaching artist, I teach accountability. And today I am practicing it by saying something unpopular. We do need to recognize the probation staff who do show up. In my work, I've been blocked from having impact, but I've also witnessed extraordinary commitment from staff, probation officers, field staff, even the janitors who wipe your floors, who treat our youth with compassion, respect, and care. Many are parents themselves. They work grueling 16-hour shifts, sometimes doubling up because someone else didn't show up for them. They do it so our kids aren't locked up in their cells all day, and they stay because the youth matter to them. I've seen officers pay out of pocket for hair products to keep kids feeling confident for their family visits. I've seen them teach self-worth, education, and responsibility, not because they have to, but because they care deeply. These are not just jobs to them. Leaders in probation, you have some of the most incredible, dedicated staff I have ever seen in any corporation, business, or county-led endeavor, who continue to show up regardless of the continuous chaos and powder keg-like situations that mount due to the lack of dedication from other probation staff who don't show up for them. I've had deep discussions with many of them who choose this as a career because they are proud of what this job used to mean, the service they still provide anyway, and giving back to kids who need it most. I have a list of over 50 officers who have supported me when they did not have to, who I hope I thank enough times in person, and that would still be not enough gratitude for their service. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? I wanted to, and this is something that I want to let the chief know. One of the young ladies who is in the field had been deployed several times. She came back and she discovered that 2 of her high-risk sex offenders had been assigned to the kiosk. Another arsonist had been assigned to the kiosk. And I read about him in the LA Times a few days later. Is this something that is okay to you? Also, there's one other thing. People are talking about how great the probation officers are, and they are really great. But for example, one lady that I know of that we honored as the union because she was doing so well, she would have bags and bags of toys and things for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, etc. For years she had this, but what happened to her? She somehow got put in a position where she felt she had to retire long before she meant to. But she was fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, let's talking about combine 2 items, right? So I want to ask our director, maybe next time if the chiefs talk about 10 items together, that means we only talk for 2 minutes. I think, I take the bus 2 hours right here just for you to cheat on my 2 minutes speaking time because you combine 2 items together. If you want to combine them together, yes, you need to combine the public comments time together as well. That's called equality. Going back to the item that I heard the chief talking about, $25,000 sign-on bonus, and somehow we received 0 interest. That says a lot about this department. I have a hard time to believe that, because if you give someone a hiring bonus of 25,000, I would assume 100 people lining up right here every day. Second of all, I'm talking about the commissioners, that when you have a commissioners, when you have so many politicians that are focusing on the 1% misconduct and then continue to ignore the 99% good work of the probation officers, that's what you get, low morale. Nobody wants to join. That's exactly how you created that. Continue to about the releasing the kids back to the street. Talking about releasing the kids, releasing the criminals, that I want to quote Sheriff Villanueva, because Hilda Solis wants to get rid of the men's central jail and release everything. Using the Sheriff Villanueva's response, that if you believe every single one of them are safe, make sure to release every single one of them back to your neighborhood, not to my neighborhood. So if you want to relieve all the kids and then you believe they are best of the best human being on this planet, just make sure do not affect other neighborhood. You love them, all yours. So that is my response to the release of the youth.
Thank you.
Hi, Vivian. You got it. Can you just take it off? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vivian Wong, education attorney at the Youth Justice Education Clinic at Loyola Law School, also a member of LAYUP and the Education Justice Coalition. I'm hearing a lot of comments about these young people being criminals, and releasing them would wreak havoc on in our communities. I represent young people who are currently detained, young people who may be detained. I know them very well. They are children. They are young people. They deserve sympathy. They deserve care. They don't deserve to be called criminals or monsters. Regarding your depopulation plan, it's also not clear to me how you are determining who is eligible for release. But I do know that you consider how they do in school in determining who is detained. And I want to make sure that you know that bad grades, suspensions, truancy, they're not reasons to detain a young person. They're reasons to support a young person, to ask if they need help, such as a special education assessment or mental health services, and that should be done in their community schools. Youth do not need to be detained in order to get education. In fact, their education is necessarily disrupted, and locking them up only delays addressing the root cause. So as you continue to assess who is eligible for release, please consult with community-based experts in education to better understand the education system and youth development. Thank you.
Thank you. You can pull the podium back if you
Is it okay?
please. Yes, thank you.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Good morning.
Thank you. Hi, you all. Good morning. Chief, I just want to thank you all. Thank you all for this time. All of you all. I just honestly just don't want to come up here complaining or anything in that nature. But I just want to give credit where credit is due. I've been at Los Padrinos every weekend, and what I can do see, and I want to acknowledge you too, Donald. I do remember I took a course in Glendale in the early 2000s when you and Chief Randy Adams was there. It was a great course that I took, and I appreciate you all. I want to give credit where credit is due with the probation officers at Los Padrinos. I've been there every weekend, and what I can do see staff, predominantly female staff. In the midst of chaos, there is order. I do want to mention that, and I know your hands are full, and I know you heard all the complaints and this, that, and the third. You heard it all, and I'm sure. But what I do want to just focus on are those that are working those excessive hours and still be able to provide and have the heart. Because right now we're living in the times where it's the heart that's being shown, you know, in these communities, not just necessarily the behavior, this, that, but how are you really treating the youth? And who are you when you say you're signing up for the youth and you're being there for probation, but what does your actions speak of? And I just want to just give credit for those that are down there that are putting in that work. And I know it starts at the top, because oftentimes we sit at the top of these pyramids, but we forget what the depth look like, you see. So I just, for me, being on the other side of the fence when it shouldn't be a fence, you could just really genuinely see the staff that are working there that do have the heart that they do. And oftentimes I would ask you, sometimes just hear what they have to say. And I know oftentimes, I know you heard it all, but just hearing their voices and just hearing those that are at the top in these facilities and their concerns, I guarantee you a lot of what you have gone through can be lifted overnight by just hearing them and working together as in unity. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Helen Eigenberg. I just want to say, first of all, thank you all for holding this meeting this morning, because with the BSCC not addressing back on, when was it, June 12th, Barry J., because they didn't have the information that they needed, Chief, to put them on the agenda, and then the BOS not addressing it because they ran out of time or whatever the reason was. The silence is really overwhelming as well, and it makes everyone feel really scared. So thank you for having this meeting and letting everyone have a chance to talk and to ask questions. You know, I just keep thinking and listening to everything. Brian Stevens has this great quote that all of us are more than the worst thing we have ever done. And I can't stop thinking about that when it comes to when I think about the kids that are in our custody and our care. And I don't want to lose sight of that. There's so much uncertainty right now, and things are going to move really quickly when they happen. And we must be working with the North Star that we are setting these kids up to succeed, whether they are in our custody or back into the community. I think it's really, really important. And I know that back in December, I believe, the Vera Institute did find that 40 of the girls were eligible to be released. And I think not forgetting about decarcerating those that we do know are eligible to come out of LP, we should be focusing on that. No one should be staying in LP that can be back in the community. And we really need to keep that at the center of the focus. So I just want to, just say again, we need to support the youth and the staff as best that we can so that everyone can succeed to their full potential. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Helen. We're going to go to our online commenters, and we're going to begin with Antonio Canul. Antonio, you may need to unmute yourself after we unmute you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can begin.
Okay, good morning. I'm a deputy probation officer with LA County Probation. The following is my opinion and not the opinion of the Los Angeles County Probation Department. I'm also making this statement on my own time. As a post-certified instructor in the use of force, firearms, less lethal munitions, de-escalation, and other topics in law enforcement, combined with my training and experience with working in the juvenile halls, camps, and conducting field operations, I'm publicly making a strong but respectful recommendation to the Chief Probation Officer and the Probation Oversight Commission to make changes to the Residential Treatment Services Bureau policy on allowing the issuance of OC spray to the DPOs that work in the camps with predisposition WIC 707 youth in an open dorm setting. I will respectfully remind you of July 28, 2023, when a riot erupted in Unit X at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, which led to several detention officers being viciously ambushed and assaulted, and the officer of the day shouting several times over the facility radio, "The youth are attacking officers with deadly weapons." One young adult was assisted by other youth in scaling the perimeter wall and ran into the golf course. I vividly remember this incident and know it to be true because I was the one SEO officer that apprehended him on the golf course and returned him to movement and control. As Downey PD was arriving, staging, and the Sheriff Department helicopter was shining their light over us. I will also respectfully remind you of November 4th, 2023, when youth in the same living unit assaulted a female supervisor, took her keys, and a group of youth made their way to the perimeter wall once again. They assisted another youth over the wall. This time, my coworkers apprehended the youth and his female juvenile accomplice on the corner of Garfield and Carmont in Southgate. I was there as well to take pictures of the evidence. Mr. CPO and ladies and gentlemen of the POC, we do not want a repeat of 2023's escapes. If these occur in RTSB, we may be mounting search and rescue operations in the foothills of the Santa Monica or the San Gabriel Mountains. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next commenter is Dr. Ezra Rule Muhammad. You can unmute yourself.
Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning. Yes, please begin.
Yes, my name is Dr. Isranullah Mohammed. I'm a clinical psychologist, systems equity advocate, and a family caregiver who has worked directly within Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. I've also navigated these systems on behalf of loved ones in both California and Massachusetts. I'm here today to voice my support for the Commission's ongoing efforts to bring transparency, accountability, and safe.
We've lost your audio.
Oh, can you hear me now? I'm
Yep.
so sorry.
Yes. Yes. Please begin.
Yes, in April, I introduced a framework to the Behavioral Health Commission called the Bureau Care to Custody Cemetery Pipeline. It's a model that tracks how systems gaps escalate risk when care and oversight break down. What begins as unmet needs often ends in crisis, containment, or irreversible loss. I have developed a prevention-based companion framework called the B2C 3A Pipeline Prevention Model, which is designed to support ethical implementation, trauma-informed infrastructure, and real-time accountability.
Sir, can you keep on the agenda item, please?
It's agenda item 4 and 5. I have so I just wanted to emphasize that I developed a prevention framework called the B2C 3A Pipeline Prevention Model, and it's designed to support ethical implementation, trauma-informed infrastructure, and real-time accountability. These tools are applicable across sectors and reflect lived experience, systems knowledge, and cross-agency alignment. I've submitted a summary to this commission for the public record. I hope you'll consider it as part of your oversight, especially as you review the depopulation plan and operational reforms. I want to help improve and heal our public systems. I do not see conflict. I see care, clarity, and community-rooted solutions. Thank you for your leadership and your commitment to protecting our youth and the future of public trust.
Thank you. And your written comments are attached to the agenda and were submitted to the commissioners today. We have one final speaker, and then we'll cut off public comment for this item. It's call-in user number 9. Your number starts with 661.
Our youth and the future.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. My current question is regarding the current staffing crisis, which has been in place for the past 4 years. Previously, we've had the GSN group supervisor night item, which requires a high school diploma plus clearing background, as well as a DSO, detention service officer, which requires 60 units in community college, as well as passing a background check. I don't know why, if we're during this hiring crisis, why those would be eliminated, and the only job that you can apply for entry level is DPO1, which requires a bachelor's degree. People with bachelor's degrees have a multitude of options. Therefore, maybe the probation department isn't necessarily going to be their first option, or if they are hired in, they eventually end up moving to a different department once they, realize the mess that they're getting into. And I don't know why the department would eliminate those 2 entry-level positions. It seems contrary to what we're dealing with right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you to all the commenters.
Thank you. Unless there are any more questions or comments, commissioners, I was going to motion for recess. Commissioner Meredith?
Yeah, I just want to point out that we're not alone in this. San Diego is facing a very similar situation, as is San Bernardino County.
Thank you. Well, seeing no question. Oh, Commissioner Ship.
Yeah, and then maybe this is more for the community. Like, I don't think nobody's advocating just to let kids come home but there are other ways that we can support young people without them always have to go into a juvenile setting. What I will say is that there are a lot of probation officers from top to bottom that are really good people who really work very hard. And so I want the community to know that we understand that, and our job up here is to make sure that you understand what we understand as well. So
Just want to underscore that comment as well. Just a thought and just one other comment. Is there, if we can agree that this has been a crisis staffing, right, for some years, are there not, like, understanding that it takes 8 months to kind of get someone hired, is there not some sort of, I don't know, emergency declaration or that can be declared for the department or for the county that allows us to fast track, folks to get hired? Like what other levers are at our disposal if we know that our young folks are in need of care and it is taking nearly a year to get someone hired? It seems like we have a crisis on our hands. And I'm wondering if we can appeal to the Board of Supervisors or the CEO's office for the county to figure out some kind of emergency loophole or mechanism to kind of get folks hired swiftly. And that's so. And the second part is, as we were thinking about young people who are going to be eligible to step down into less restrictive placements, we rely on field officers to sort of make sure that they can support CBOs to sort of do that work effectively while folks are serving their time while in community. And if it's taking 8 months to kind of get folks hired, and there are a number of youth who are eligible to step down into LRPs, I'm concerned about the ability for us to support the community-based organizations who are housing and supporting those youth, and for the community itself. And so I wanted to kind of put that out there.
Yes, you should be concerned about all of it. You're right. When there isn't staff in one place, it's tough for that continuity. There are it gets a little complicated here, but essentially much of the work that you've described really could be done by probation assistants. These are the non-sworn components. And so we haven't done like a full dive into all the things we've done with respect to classifications, but we've created an additional classification. It's called a probation assistant. That's a non-sworn item that can do many of those functions that have to do with support, risks and needs assessments, check in with folks. And so that item has been created, and when they're a process of hiring folks into that. That should help. Not everybody needs to be a sworn peace officer, right? And that's a different pool of folks, and we can bring folks in that have a different experience as well. Or it could be for folks that were probation officers. They can no longer perform the peace officer functions if they so select to go into those. That's another possibility. In terms of expediting the hiring, I wouldn't recommend it. I think that part of what's important, especially for a chief, is I personally deputize every peace officer within the department. And if they're not vetted and we are cutting corners to bring folks in that shouldn't be, that is really a recipe for disaster. So that's the minimum it takes to get somebody through a background investigation, to visit their neighbors, to look at their history, to determine whether in fact they should. There are other areas that, on a different occasion, maybe we can discuss that could maybe expedite. For example, it's not the hiring of peace officers, it's that post and BSCC are different components. So if I have tomorrow someone who is a campus police officer, the fact that they're already post-trained, I cannot advance them to simply take the juvenile training and put them in. That's a whole category of people that is not available to us because it's a whole different kind of peace officer training. Same thing for our reserves. I can't just take a reserve officer somewhere else that they may have on their heart that they want to work here a few hours a week. I can't do that because it's a separate entity. The post component is only the 2 weeks, 832. All the other training is through STC under BSCC. So there are these two state agencies that really don't allow for crossover. So if we're really talking about efficiencies and where to be able to pull people or even part-time folks, that is a challenge. I would not seek to shorten or skip the background piece for peace officers. I'd rather say, well, tell me all the things I don't need to use a peace officer for. Let's hire the appropriate people there, and then continue the significant vetting that we have for peace officers, because we put people's lives in their hand. They, like everybody here is sensitive to, they make detention decisions, they take people's liberty. And I think it's right to put them through that long vetting process.
Just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we subvert a process that is important. I'm just trying to figure out how we can make things more efficient and faster. So I just want to be clear about that.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. But that's a question that's come before, which is I've been asked, look, let's just skip that part, hire them, and then do it after they're here. I've done so. That's maybe I'm answering someone else's question that you popped into my head.
And then about the support for for the folks who'll be stepping down into community and who won't, like the community-based organizations who won't now then have the support of field officers, which are a vital part of that, the relationship between probation and these LRPs.
Yeah, I don't, this is, first of all, I like the fact that we're in a place where we're saying we want field probation officers, right? Usually the conversation is the field probation officers are in the way of people's recovery, they're arresting for violations, et cetera. I like this place, this discussion, which is essentially, we understand that they are a necessary link between somebody being successful in their best moment. I don't think all of that is sworn work. So the proposal that I have and that's moving forward in our reorganization is a lot of the work that you're describing does not have to be sworn work. I think it's going to be a combination of folks that have other discipline and understanding and can have meaningful exchanges with those families. It's going to have to be a team. And so you may still be assigned a probation officer for a larger group, but it's a team, and the person that you're going to be talking to for those referrals, or the person who's going to be doing the visit to the what do we call
LRP.
LRPs. So it may be a non-sworn, except for one time when the team gets together to do the assessment. So we're just going to have to be extraordinarily open and flexible on how this may look given the current challenges.
Keep us updated on that. Thank you.
It's interesting because I think it's SB 357 kind of argues that not everything has to be sworn. So, and that will be heard on Wednesday up at the state. So thank you, Chief. Oh, one more.
Mr. Bell had asked a question. I was wondering if you'd be able to answer, and I don't remember the details now, but it had to do with kind of a mixed message being received around the officers.
Oh, it had to do with the arrest.
Oh, no, it was about the men and women between Kilpatrick and
Kirby and Kilpatrick.
Mr. Bell was giving us rumors. The decisions have not been made on who's being transferred there. So in all likelihood, we're going to have enough volunteers, I hope, so that the folks that go there want to be there. Will that mean that everyone that's there gets to stay? Maybe not. I mean, it is very important for the ratio to be appropriate. And as you know, we're going to need more women employees there than perhaps would occur if we just left everyone there now. I don't know the answer to that. Those final decisions have not been made. So I think that's just folks speculating that it's going to be one way or another. What I can tell you is that we've asked for volunteers first. We're going to ask the folks that are there how many want to stay and how many want to go. And then we're going to have to see if that meets the needs of the young people. If the ratios are off and it's too many men compared to the women, then we'll have to make those decisions. And then we'll go by inverse seniority. So that hasn't happened yet. You had one other one, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, the one that bothered me, the one that had to do with supporting staff members. No staff member should believe that I'm going to support them if they commit a crime. That just has to be clear. I take your point that they have their day in court, but these are referrals that we made because I believe there was credible there. So I'm not speaking simply because of a rumor or something else. I have to be clear. No probation officer should use their authority to commit a crime, especially against one of the folks we have. That's what I'm referring to. For everything else, the staff, you can count on me. I believe in this profession. That's why I'm doing this. I believe that what we do is incredibly important and that you have other ways that you could make money, that you're choosing to do this because you believe in it. But it offends me personally when one of our officers commits a crime under the color of authority, and it should every other probation officer. That's what I don't want those comments in the paper to lead you to believe I don't support officers. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm not even talking about things that you could be trained or administrative or lesser types of personnel issues. I'm talking about crimes. If you commit a crime, you don't have my support.
Thank you, Chief. So we will take a short break. It's 11:13 now. We will return at 11:25 with DYD making their presentation. Okay, commissioners, it is now 11:26. If we all can have a seat and get this meeting back on track.
He's coming.
Bring my own slides. I have to turn around. Oh, no. I know, that's my dad.
No, I learned a long time ago. Go to where the expertise is. You don't know.
I like it. I think it's good. Oh, good. Great. Yeah. Do you know about this RFK process that the presiding judge is convening? No, but I mean, we heard about it. You heard about it. You guys don't know about it. But you guys are. We are. And Shalon has raised this too. Keep saying we should include intake as a priority to look at. What? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you all for coming back. We are going to be moving to agenda item number 6. Want to time this perfectly for David Carroll's appearance and his DYD team to present on updates from the Department of Youth Development about the community listening sessions on the Depopulation Plan, DYD's progress with the Resilience and Accountability for Youth program, RAY, and facility programming, including credible messengers. Director Carroll, please proceed with your presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. This thing on. Thank you for having us today. This morning, I will be briefly going over the preliminary results from the listening sessions, a little bit on the depopulation plan, and then our director of reentry will be taking over to discuss the Reentry Action for Youth program, as well as some of the other in-facility programming that is taking place. And available, obviously, for any questions that you all may have. Her name is Patricia Song. I don't know if I said her name just now when I said her director. So Patricia Song will be taking over to walk you through the PowerPoint. So we'll just kind of leave it on that slide for now. As you know, we held 5 community listening sessions across each supervisorial district. 4 of those were in person. 1 was virtual due to the challenges that were created with the immigration enforcement that was taking place the same week as that session. So the one for South LA actually took place virtually out of an abundance of caution. Through those 5 sessions, about 150 community members attended in total, including community-based service providers, families, and some young people. Also, I should note that I believe that at each one of those sessions, there was at least one representative from the Probation Oversight Commission, different people for the most part, but you all were in attendance also. The sessions featured a moderated panel, included the Probation Department, Department of Mental Health, Department of Health Services. Panelists were asked to provide the core elements of what they would be doing to support the plan and what specific support they would provide for youth, families, and providers during the transition. After the Q&A session, during the Q&A session, we used written questions, so we captured each one of the questions. Then after the presentations, we did small group tabling exercises where folks were able to continue those conversations that started in the larger panel. The overreaching themes that were identified, number 1 was transportation, which you talked about a little bit earlier in this meeting, and participants shared feedback that the transportation options were important for families, not just providing a shuttle bus, but also offering rideshare vouchers, potentially working with Metro, looking at ways to address the gaps in public transportation around the facilities, not just for CVK. So I should highlight, we were also talking about specifically Barry J. Nydorf, where there's no public transportation that goes directly to the facility. There's still a gap between where public transportation stops and then the facility is located. Certainly there was a lot of concern about CVK, but they weren't alone in that transportation. We heard gut-wrenching stories about even at Los Padrinos, where young people were in court, the young person was being allowed to go home, but the family didn't have a way to get there. So that young person had to stay an extra evening because there was just no way. They were in court in Compton or somewhere, and there was just no way for the parent to get to Los Padrinos that same day. So I just want to highlight CVK is certainly our focus as part of this work, but it's broader than just CVK. Another theme was resolving some of the gaps in consistent communication, training, and programming to provide a culture and climate in facilities that prevents gaps for access to youth to have access to programs, et cetera. Reevaluating the intake and detention control processes and tools, including expanding the processes for assessing placement alternatives. And then I think one of the things that came out was an ongoing evaluation of communication and community engagement that goes beyond just what we did as part of sharing the components of this plan. So making sure that community engagement and communication continues even when we're not in the time of crisis. I should also share that while these listening sessions were really around the depopulation plan, right? The court-ordered depopulation plan. We did take the opportunity to educate the public that DYD's mission has not changed, right? And our goal is still to keep kids out of the system if we can, right? Through prevention, through diversion, and to look for the most harm reducing ways to serve young people who do find themselves in custody, and to return as many as possible who are eligible to be living in the community, to be in the community with the wraparound services that they need. And I think that is probably a perfect segue to Ray, which is one of those wraparound services that communities, that young people need to successfully thrive in community. So if you want, I can hand it off to Patricia, or if you want to ask me questions now, I can answer any questions that you might have about the listening sessions or the transportation.
Any questions? Commissioner Terry, followed by Commissioner Kakani.
I know the department had said they were going to put out an FAQ that would be sent to families, updating them on the depopulation plan. Is there any way that some of the information that was maybe shared in the listening sessions could also help populate that? I don't know if there's any crossover that would be helpful for families.
Yeah, so we are in the process, our communication team is in the process of capturing all the questions, all the responses for the production of kind of I hate to call it a report back, but basically just a synopsis of the listening sessions. I will absolutely offer that to probation as something that they can include in their FAQ. And maybe if you can follow up to see if they chose to do that or not, or this body, not you specifically, but yeah.
Commissioner Kakani.
Just following up on the transportation piece, the chief had shared that I don't know that we got a concrete answer, so I'm hoping that I can get one from you around either reaching out to DYD partners or community-based organizations to support with transportation, especially given the times that we're living in, the number of families that might be undocumented, the lack of safety that comes with probation being the transportation provider without any kind of explicit naming of the way probation intends to keep folks safe or whether they can or cannot. So yeah, just curious if you could potentially provide some more detail or like actual.
Yep. Yeah, happy to. So the conversations that we've had in the listening sessions, in the depopulation plan weekly meetings. Matter of fact, that meeting is today at 2:00. We've been meeting consistently, sometimes a few times a week. Patricia's part of those meetings. We've been talking about transportation specifically. Families have indicated that they would prefer not to be in shuttle buses or in group transportation for some of the reasons that you just named. And there's also some concern about family members potentially having conflict with one another, because you never know, which kids happen to have parents that both needed transportation. It could be kids that were at odds when they were living in community, et cetera. So there were immigration issues. There were a variety of reasons. So the method that community is asking for were much more individualized, either taxis or rideshare. So what we brought up in those meetings was the JCOD, the 1-800 number that they use, that then, you can push a button, and adults have been able to use that to get to appointments, to court, et cetera. What our recommendation was to partner with JCOD. We offered to be part of that, and we were able to, they got in contact with JCOD. So they are working specifically directly with JCOD to be added as one of the items in the queue, right? So that they can then, young people's families can access transportation. There's, along a similar track, there's some other partnership opportunities between DYD and JCOD, where we are looking at being added to the queue for things like court date reminders and things like that. So there was a board motion about a month ago that addressed that. So we think that we can kind of do it all together concurrently, so that addition can be added, so they can have access to the transportation and to some other functions that adults already have access to. So of course, we'll have to figure out the MOU process. There was some concern about the cost, but based on conversations from today, certainly probation sounds like they are willing to foot the bill, certainly for CVK as a pilot. But as I mentioned earlier, I think we should probably look at some of the other locations where parents and families may need access. One of the things that we're doing is canvassing our providers currently to, if the family didn't, for whatever reason, want to be picked up at their house, we're looking at CBOs that may be willing to be pick-up and drop-off locations. So that canvassing is taking place currently. We're also looking at CBOs to be a place where families can do virtual visits if for some reason they don't have the device or the technology at their home. So we're asking which CBOs have a private space where families could go on a Saturday or Sunday to be able to meet with their loved one virtually if necessary. We were looking at those drop-off locations for shuttles and that kind of thing, but I think we've moved away from that. The idea of CBOs transporting young people was one that I was less comfortable with, based on a lot of stuff. But that was something that was under discussion, just to see if there was a CBO that may be interested.
Thanks.
Okay, I guess we can go on to Ms. Hong's presentation.
I apologize. I'm going to be turning around to look at the slides as I speak. I'm excited to share about some of the work with the reentry branch, and want to acknowledge my team in the back, Latasha Matthews, who oversees our facility-based programming alongside Elizabeth Lopez. And then our Ray team, Sahalit Bahiro and Ron, I am blanking on your last name. Sorry, Ron, but they are here with any details to answer your questions with, in case I don't cover them. Reentry Action for Youth, oh, thank you so much, is a pilot of ours to really pull together in a coordinated way community-based supportive services for young people. And it's a little bit of a misnomer in that, although we are focused on really prioritizing young people coming back into the community from a carceral setting, whether it's camp, SYTF, or juvenile hall, it really is open to young people, any young person who is court involved. So we are also making sure that young people who are in community on probation and not connected to services are receiving services if referred. These are the core components of RAISE services. Key to this is a mentorship by someone with lived experience, what we call credible messengers, who is really working with a young person to navigate a system to find resources that are tailor-made for them. So whether that's housing assistance, job training, vocational training, educational services, substance use treatment. So it may be a variety of services that they are trying to link a young person to. And I'm really excited that we have designed this program to have monetary incentives, right? To really have young people be positively incentivized to continue to participate at $200 a month. And then that's actually accompanied by discretionary funds we've made available to our community partners to, again, support the cost of anything that is identified that a young person needs, whether it's clothing, transportation, tuition support, et cetera. And then we are doing court accompaniment. So the providers are actually working with us to, really develop the guides and practice for how to accompany a young person to court, provide court advocacy, and also share information with the court, which is all a balance. I want to say also that this was really thoughtfully put together by my team based on other programs in other jurisdictions, so best practices, some of which already exist in this county, but also taking into account what young people specifically need, right? So borrowing from adult reentry, from youth development practices, and then sort of integrating what is core to all of the reentry work, credible messenger leadership and mentorship. I've already covered this, that really any court-involved young person is eligible from age 12 to 25, although we are prioritizing young people being released from juvenile facilities, either pre or post-disposition. So this is really an opportunity to ensure young people come back into the community in our minds as soon as possible, because we have a plan to support them with. But it can really also serve as an alternative to incarceration in the first place, which we are especially excited about. Next slide. This is a map, which I know is a little bit hard to see, but the point is that we have 18 providers, about to be 19, which really cover the geographic span and diversity of Los Angeles County. So every SPA and really every supervisorial district has a number of providers that will serve young people. And here, next slide, you'll see the number of young people we're able to serve. So currently, we have a program capacity to serve up to 340 young people, and that will grow in the new fiscal year to 400 young people. This launched in March of this year, so we've only been underway for about 3 months, but I'm excited to see, if you look at the right column, that we already have 133 young people enrolled, with another 36 being evaluated, and this number changes every week. Part of what's been successful about getting young people referred are really two components. One is just the providers we selected. We actually did a request for information last summer, got over 70 submissions about programs that provide reentry, and then we ended up selecting 18 to begin with, which again will grow to 19 in the new year. And a lot of these organizations were already doing reentry work with young people, which means they have active partnerships with courts, with probation, with other justice actors, as well as with the community. So some of the referrals have happened organically. But the second component to all of this is really active partnership and collaboration with justice system partners. So we started with Defense Counsel, all 3 defense offices really collaborated on what that referral mechanism and referral form and referral protocol would look like. And we've met with the DA's office. We're currently working with probation, both field services as well as investigative units, to figure out how to actively refer from probation. And then we're also working with the court. We presented in the fall. We recently presented to the bench again this spring. And we're actually looking, I'm kind of skipping to information on other slides too, but we're looking to partner with the presiding judge on a competency hub court, and having like a very active, dedicated referral pathway just straight from the judge in that case. I think I've covered actually everything on these slides. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep going and actually shift a little bit to talking about our in-facility programming. Just one slide. Yeah, please go ahead.
Just wanted to underscore that this was a real partnership. The development of this program really came from what was originally a DYD program, but we partnered with the Defense Counsel, we partnered with the DA, we partnered with the Youth Commission, and they added feedback. They were actually, the Youth Commission was actually the entity that came up with the idea for the predisposition youth, because they were really concerned about young people who were living in community who had access to no programs because they weren't currently under the care of probation. So I'm really excited about the partnership level that took place to launch it. And I do want to say how excited I am that we've received at least 2 cases where the young person would have been incarcerated at Los Padrinos, but the judge instead released the young person, and the condition was that they had to be part of the RAY program. So I know that's not a huge number, but it certainly was exciting to us to be able to be an alternative. We would love for the young people to be released without having to be part of that, but if it's a choice between being in the facility or being at home, and the only requirement is to access this program, we appreciate that opportunity. So I just wanted to underscore that.
Thank you for that. And I should add too that data collection, evaluation, and continuous program improvement are really going to be key. This is a pilot. We are looking to our partners to hear how it's going, both from the community and from system actors. So in real time, we're hearing about anecdotes of where it's really making the difference in a judge's opinion or decision about the disposition of a young person, and we'll continue to track all of that to see how it's going in the first year and ongoing. This is just a summary slide about our in-facility partnerships. Just to remind folks, the motion, the authority for this role and the ability to partner with community-based organizations to fill programming gaps in facilities came from 2 motions, one in March of 2022. And then again, last year, in July of 2024, the board gave us authority to contract up to $2 million. So this is sort of limited authority to really sort of laser in on key programming gaps. And then we subsequently did contract with 5 organizations that you can see here. One is providing arts-based healing, mindfulness curriculum at Barry J. and Los Padrinos. Maynard is providing coursework, including financial literacy and reentry work at LP. West Cal is our partner providing vocational programming for SYTF youth at Barry J. And then A Swan Within and Juvenile Giants, which you heard about earlier today, provide fitness programming at Barry J and LP. So this is just the start, of course, of some of our role in filling programming gaps for young people. Probation does so, as well as other agencies. So we actively try to partner around identifying those gaps. Longer term, as you may know, the department had submitted a proposal to the Board of Supervisors detailing what we think is a comprehensive care coordination approach that includes filling programming gaps, but really sort of integrates 3 things: individualized planning and care planning for young people, which should inform programming and which really should drive the overall approach to addressing youth behavior, both positive progress as well as violations inside the facilities. And that's something we're continuing to flesh out what that would look like, were we to step into a larger role beyond just filling discrete programming gaps. Yeah, of course.
I just wanted to make sure that this programming is in addition to the Credible Messenger programming that's taking place in the facilities with providers specifically for SYTF boys, SYTF girls, predisposition girls, and gender expansive youth, and those with developmental disabilities. So in addition to these programs, the Credible Messenger programs are in place, and some of those have additional subcontracting resources where they are working with some other providers, where we're ultimately supporting the overall work, but not directly contracting with some of those subcontracted agencies.
And then I'll just end by adding to what our director shared about Credible Messengers, that we're excited to expand to all facilities soon. We had released a competitive solicitation. It's hard to remember when, I think April or May, and we're not quite ready to share who our partners will be, but the coverage will expand beyond the current facilities that we're in. They should cover all facilities at some significant levels. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you for the updates and the presentation. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments? Commissioner Julian?
Don't say that. I'm asking a question on behalf of Commissioner Canales, except not really. I know she's listening to the meeting. She had car trouble this morning. So sorry not to be here. So I'm just channeling Commissioner Canales. Can members of the Probation Oversight Commission refer youth to Ray who might be, who they might encounter in their day-to-day, and how would that work?
I'm going to let Sahali
Oh,
talk
well,
about the
they can't hear.
referral pathway.
You come up to the microphone.
Don't be shy.
But I know the answer is absolutely. The referrals can come from anyone. And we should probably make a referral form available on our website even.
Yeah, and in some of the community meetings, there were young people where I literally walked up to them at the end of the meeting. They said they had just been released and said, "Hey, we got this new program." I happened to be at Rocky Friday, dropping off some suits for some young people that are about to go through a graduation, and several are about to go home in the next month or so, and I was referring them to the program. So certainly we want those referrals. But Sahali, please.
Yes, so just to reiterate what David and Patricia said, absolutely. And we would love to meet with a representative from your team. I mean, I know we're in talks with Eduardo, so if you guys want to set up something a bit more organized, we're happy to do that as well. But there is a flyer that we have. We can email it to you guys. There is a Ray email that you can refer a youth to, and then you can send it to any one of the PMs as well. And then eventually we have on the flyer on the back, there is a list of the providers along with the agencies. We can provide a listserv of all the point of contacts at each of the providers. So if you want to make the linkage directly to the provider, that's fine too. So there are many avenues, but yeah, definitely send it our way.
And lots of rooms for us to improve the process. Along the way, it's brand new, but we recognize streamlining the referral process is kind of a next step.
Commissioner Kakani?
So I'm just trying to understand, how do you access the young folks who are currently incarcerated? Like, are you able to connect them with whoever their mentor is going to be before they've released, or does everything kind of start once a young person is released?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think underlying that, if I am hearing sort of in between the lines, is a principle we really appreciate, which is connecting young people well before they're released and as early as possible is a best practice. So, one of the tricky positions that DYD is in is that we don't have access to individualized youth data, right? So we have built referral pathways that protect young people's confidentiality. So we don't see, although we're tracking in an anonymized way, individualized progress, we don't ever see people's names, date of birth, et cetera. We are really relying on justice partners to connect young people with us early, right? So that's why we started with the defense. If the defense bar really see a young person being ripe for connection to Ray, then we hope that happens early. And then through defense counsel, we can get a court order for the partner to go in early and connect with a young person well before they're released. We also know that increases service utilization to have that relationship cultivated early on. And then the second thing we're still actively trying to sort of design is the bridge between our in-facility credible messengers and then the Ray providers, right? Because some of those relationships do exist among our in-facility providers. And so we want that sort of collaboration and handoff to happen early as well.
That makes sense.
But we're figuring it out for sure.
And then the two young folks that you said were never essentially had to step foot in an LP, I think, or maybe had to step in for a quick period and then released. That referral, I guess I'm just trying to understand how that happens so we can make it happen more often, because not every young person who's inside LP is, anyway, needs to be there.
Is the question, how do we connect them?
Like, how do you, so when you.
Oh, those two.
Go ahead.
Was that
I think
Came from the judge.
Okay.
Yeah, Sahali, you have those details.
Oh, it's not on.
I think you got to turn it on.
Hang on. Turn
I
it
think
on.
it's okay.
Oh,
So yeah, two cases. The first case came through the referral pathway that we set with the defense counsel. A public defender referred a youth to our program and presented that the youth
would have this community support if they were to be given the opportunity to be released with this program. And then the judge from out of the Compton court, essentially released the kid to Ray. The second case came out of the Pomona court. This particular case happened with one of our providers, Center for Empowerment of Families. The mentor had a relationship with like a probation officer, and was able to accompany the kid to the court, and the judge made the decision to release the kid to Ray. So to what Patricia meant, a lot of these are anecdotal, and we're really trying to systematize how we're organizing our providers to provide that court accompaniment. And we're also going to be piloting certain cases like what Patricia mentioned with Judge Espinosa, and we're meeting with the judges to really make this more systematic way. But these two kind of came very early findings out of the 2 month of operation, and we're hoping we'll see more of these cases.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. And then I guess to your comment about like court advocacy, is that a part of the process program? I know you talked about court accompaniment, but
I don't know. I'll answer first and see if Sahlit wants to add anything. I think we assume that accompanying them to court means that they may be asked to provide, some statement to the court about how a young person is doing, which is why even at our May 13th kickoff, it was a topic of training, and then we're going to continue to revisit it, because I don't know that there's a lot of best practices on how to do this sort of balance. You're cultivating a trusting relationship with a young person, and you have to provide information to the court about how a young person is doing. And so while we want to be forthright, we also want to respect, the confidence and the trust that we've built with young people through the mentors. So it's going to be a balance, and we're going to, I think, really design that in partnership with our community partners as well as with the bench. I'm a defense lawyer by training. I know that they can subpoena, right, any of these providers, and really are obligated to share information, right? So we want to provide guidance on how to do that well. You want to add anything?
No, that's good.
Commissioner Terry.
I was happy to hear that you all are collecting data, and I was curious if you could share some of the outcomes or data points that you're tracking now.
So yes, right now we have the demographics and enrollment outcomes, and we're actually working with our research policy innovation team to really put together dashboards to understand, okay, where are referrals coming from, because we are establishing all of these relationships with the public defender, alternate public defender, judges, community probation, kind of understanding where the youth are being funneled through the program too. And then once they're enrolled in the program, understanding the types of services that they're being connected to, how many are being referred to housing, to employment, education, and how many are being provided, financial assistance, and what ways have that led to their success in reintegrating back into community. And then, so those will be kind of like process outcomes that we will be able to measure in the interim. But down the road, the vision is maybe down the road, really doing a lot more robust evaluation to understand the impacts of the program, right? Like, is it reducing recidivism? Is it breaking cycles of incarceration? But yeah, we're actively working on organize. So maybe the next time we present, we might have pie charts and outcomes around that.
And alongside that sort of quantitative data, we want qualitative data. So I think it's really built into the design of almost all of our work that we have learning sessions where we bring together providers. And while we don't have a specific timeline for the Ray providers to come together, we've started to talk about bringing all of them back together alongside our in-facility credible messengers to really share and identify, what are strengths of the program, what are the needs and capacity improvements we need that the department can help address to make this really as robust and effective as possible. And it really isn't, like just a group of service providers. We're trying to build a system, and that's why the referrals and the partnerships with the justice actors are just as important as our partnership with the community groups.
And then one last question. I don't know if this is relevant, but as you all expand, but then if we know there is going to be movement across facilities, how are you all, or how does the model change or adapt with those changes?
Do you want to try it?
You can, yeah, I think we we're going to say the same.
Well, for Ray, the model really doesn't change because we are trying to go and meet young people wherever they are. And then with our countywide coverage, really there should be a provider anywhere close to them that we would connect them with. You know, DYD is playing sort of like a middle person role here. So we are sometimes, you know, just sort of allowing referrals to act organically come to the groups, but we're also facilitating those referrals, meaning when we receive a referral directly, we are actually trying to identify the best provider for that young person and making that match, which is a little bit different from some of our other provider networks and how they are structured. For the in-facility group programming, we've talked to our partners about who is able to sort of move with the population and those who are best suited to stay whatever population, you know, comes to that facility. So for instance, most of our providers who are working at LP will stay at LP. And we believe that everyone else is able to move with the population.
I mean, and specifically for the girls, I mean, this wasn't the question, but maybe it helps. The provider that is supporting girls and gender expansive youth has already agreed to follow them to Kilpatrick when they move. So recognizing it is a little bit more of a challenge, we may need to look at some things contractually to you know, compensate them for that extra challenge, but they've already agreed to be there.
Commissioner Kakani.
You said the provider. Does that mean that you all are only contracted with one provider who works with the girls and gender expansive youth?
Currently, yeah, just one provider. Young Women's Freedom Center is
Okay.
the. I know they have multiple subsidiaries, so I may not be using the exact one, but that's the
They're the ones who
overarching.
do the credible messenger work, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
But then all of the other programming for girls and gender expansive youth is held by probation?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
That's right.
So I had a question regarding outreach. Do you ever post up at visiting at Los Padrinos as families are coming in?
Currently, no, but it's a great question because we have been talking about the possibility of having co-located staff, both at Los Padrinos as well as the courts, and are actively designing, you know, what that job description might look like and exploring the capacity to even divert some of our current staff to be able to serve that purpose, knowing that when there's that direct engagement with young people and families that we think that there will be higher enrollment. So not currently, but it's in.
Yeah, I know that as a probation officer in the field and actually one in camp also, that you get to know the families and talking to the youth and talking to the family, you come across families that are not just struggling with the youth that's already with us, but the brother or sister is coming along with the same challenges that this kid faced. So, and in line with that too is, you know, just letting the detention service officers and the probation officers that are actually in the facility know what's available, because sometimes we forget that their families and siblings are involved.
We've recently moved into hiring contracted staff to be in the facilities whenever any programming is taking place. So we're really trying to identify both physically the best place for them to sit. And I want it to be towards the front of the building so that they can be a resource both for the CBOs as well as probation and the families as they enter and exit. So that's an area where we're really trying to grow, because I do recognize the need for us to be there. And be an immediate, as opposed to a piece of paper, being able to talk to a person, is just much more effective.
All right. So Wendy, do we have any written or live public comment?
Janae, I don't think we had any written public comments on the DYD item. If anyone would like to give public comment here in the room, I welcome you to approach the podium. And if you're online, use the little raise your hand function or dial *3. If you're watching on YouTube, you can't make public comment you need to join on WebEx to make public comment. We will do 2 minutes and we'll start in the room. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay. Hello again. I guess this is a good chance to thank DYD for bringing on. The program wouldn't be happening without them. So, and I know I'm not the only one that's the case. And yeah, I think there's always like, I hope things happen faster. I hope this contract goes faster. But for a lot of people who are starting programming, they gave up their other jobs and they're living off their life savings. And I paid my staff just with my savings. So without them, I think I would have, it never would have happened. So I appreciate that. But to piggyback on that, is there a forum or a discussion group where DYD kind of releases what programming is not out there that they're looking for? Because I think people in different organizations are talking to people in different organizations and coming up with ideas like, obviously, I think culinary skills for boys, including myself, would be who are going to be independent. They maybe were 15, 16, and now they're coming out at 19, 20. I think there's so many programs that I think about, but it might be really cool if we had DYD who sees this from the inside and the outside and everything in between in the families, kind of release like, hey, we're looking for programs. So if you're developing a program, would you possibly want to go down this path? Or if you know anybody that is doing programming in this area, because we probably know a lot less, but when you're inside, we talk to people all the time who are asking for different programming. So that would be cool. And you guys are definitely the ones to do it. Okay, and the last thing is I talked to a lot of individuals over, I guess, 5-6 years that I've been working with incarcerated adults and youth. And there's the discussion of job training, but the questions that I get the most is about who facilitates these individuals who get the job training, trying to get the jobs with strikes, with records, because they say over and over again, they go through every step and they don't even necessarily have bus passes. There's not a bus pass program. And I think DYD might be like incredible if they could help provide that, because that's another thing I hear from these kids all the time is they don't have bus passes and they have records, and those things act as hindrances at the end of it all. So thank you guys again though for your support. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. This is one of the best presentation in the history of woke probation. Start with the race services. This is amazing, absolutely fantastic. So I heard that if you are between 12 or 25 years old and then some sort of end up being a criminal, you have like $200 per month, $7,000 per year. So that is how it works. I have so many friends who are under 25 years old. They cannot afford their education in Rio Hondo because they are out of state residents. But now I understand that they cannot afford their education is because they are innocent citizens. That somehow, if I start to committing crime when I was 12, by the time when I become 25 years old, according to your formula, I end up with 100,000 cash in my hand. Wow. Now, next time, I heard about a credible messenger. This is absolutely amazing, credible messenger. In the previous telephone comment from that probation officer, he actually mentioned several incidents about a riot. And then, so since our director loved Incredible Messenger so much that next time when you have a riot in your facility, put your probation officer in vacation and then call your credible messenger, okay? Do not call your sheriff helicopter. Why do you call your sheriff helicopter? Do not call your Pomona police officer. Why do you call Downey police officer? Call your incredible messenger. Next time when they are fighting each other, rape each other, doing the drug, let's give them a paid vacation to all the probation officers and then call your credible messenger. Let them deal with that because they are so amazing. Because we don't do anything. We just need to talk to them and then all the problem will be solved just by talking to them. Absolutely credible messenger. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Helen.
Hi, Helen Eigenberg. I just want to say thank you. I did attend the online DYD meeting with the communities in South LA, and it was super helpful and really informative. So thank you for doing that. And this is exciting. This is the stuff that we're talking about, right? Getting the support that is needed for our youth so that they can thrive and grow and be the best version of themselves. So thank you for putting this all into play. I was familiar with Ray, so I'm glad that it's out there. And I just want to throw out, I don't know if I can mention legislation at a POC meeting, can I? SB 357. Everyone should know about it, and it's gonna give you all more access to information if it passes. So everyone should just be aware SB 357 will be coming before the Assembly, and it will give more responsibility to DYD, not taking away jobs, but just giving more responsibility. So thank you for this, and thank you for the continued work and all of you here. Great work.
Thank you, Helen. For the record, we encourage people to exercise their First Amendment rights at the POC meetings. Do we have any online comments? I don't think we have any hands raised. Okay.
Great. Commissioners, any last minute questions, comments, concerns?
Go DYD.
There you go.
Go DYD, for real. You guys are.
I know.
Just want to say I appreciate you and all the work that you all are doing and the innovative work that you all are doing in this space. And LA County is better off because that department exists. And so I just want to kind of say that for the record. Go DYD.
There you go.
I also respect everyone's First Amendment rights and their desire to say what feels right to them. But I just wanted to lift up the fact that the reason DYD exists is because for decades, probation has not been able to fully dig itself out of a hole and is unfortunately causing a lot of trauma to a lot of young folks, compounding the trauma that they already walk into these facilities with. And so credible messengers aren't here to replace whoever else exists in these facilities, but they're in a position to support young folks in a way that is different than probation has been able to. So I appreciate, again, your ability to bring that to life, to see the humanity of these young people beyond their offense, to see their potential, to see their ability to contribute to society, and to just acknowledge their dignity. And so appreciate what you all shared today and the role that you all play in that, because we oftentimes don't get to hear that from the other departments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good, David. Thanks. The fire camp, I know.
Okay, we are going to return to item 3.
Commissioner Terry, do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first? Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner Terry, who is going to talk about the CBO Relationships Ad Hoc Committee, which has officially wrapped up, but there's still some work being wrapped up.
Yes, we had to disband, I think is the word, in May because our time was up, but there were still a few outstanding issues that I wanted to give a quick update on. We had a list of community-informed recommendations that we had asked the department to respond to, and they did provide an update on May 16th, 2025. They did have a response for every recommendation. Unfortunately, there are several areas that continue to remain in progress, such as the development of an electronic programming calendar. So things that we had been recommending and that the department has been working on for some time that still are not resolved. The department did provide some other updates with some concrete responses, and the commission is developing an FAQ document that we can share back to providers so that you know how the department is officially responding to some of those recommendations that CBOs put forth. We're not able to verify that the accuracy, I would say, of some of the responses. So there's certain things that the department mentioned was in effect. For example, links on their website, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like those are working at this time. That's just one example. So we will continue to monitor, continue to follow this to see how some of these items are resolved. And I just wanted to note that Director Krista Newbold has been hosting these town halls with existing providers and providing really concrete information about what they can all expect as these different transitions take place across facilities. And those seem to be really, really helpful, and providers are getting their questions answered in that space. So just wanted to highlight that positive note.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to give the report for the policy subcommittee because commissionership had to leave and asked me to do that. So I'm very excited actually about the policy committee's conversations and work. And we had a meeting on Friday in which we discussed the committee's recommendation that the POC agendize an issue about grievances and complaints and their interplay at the July meeting. So I think it might be appropriate for there to be a motion to agendize that as a result of the recommendation of the committee for now. Yeah, I'll stop talking for a second.
I will make a motion to agendize discussing grievances, complaints, and the interplay between the two of them.
That needs a motion? And we just talk to the leadership. It's there. No, I'm thinking, I mean, do we need a motion for that?
I think if there is a motion and it passes, you must put it on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
If there's not a motion, you could still put it on the agenda. So
I'm sorry,
I'll leave it up
Commissioner
to
Harris,
I'll leave it up to you all.
Second.
It was an official recommendation of the committee. No, you're right. You're right.
Oh, okay.
That's the yes.
I am so sorry. It's just that I mean,
However it works best.
well, we can do the motion. It's just,
Okay, so there's a motion and a second, and we'll take public comment on that in a minute. And just to wrap up the conversation about the policy subcommittee, there also was a discussion about the visitation policy. That's something that the POC had brought to their attention by parents, youth, and through our observations and inspections. Both the inspections that we do inside the facility as well as visits that Dr. Gongora and my teammate Belinda Mayalo and I have done talking to parents at visitation. I think the issue that has come up most frequently is about consistency, both of the policy and the application of the policy. And so the committee talked about that, and will likely be bringing some recommendations about a consistent policy and implementation back to this full body. And then I wanted to just give a quick update on the Narcan. So as many of you know, the Probation Oversight Commission was charged by the Board of Supervisors with reviewing the one of the final, actually it's not the final stage because there is another stage, one of the stages of Narcan issuance, and this was to providers. So the department has done a very thorough job of issuing Narcan to probation employees within the facilities. And by the time we wrapped up our reporting on this agenda item, probation had said that they were prepared to have the Narcan be available to providers, but it hadn't happened yet. And I'm very pleased to report that in our recent visits to the facility, as Dr. Corral mentioned maybe 2 meetings ago, we have seen the availability of Narcan, including little belts that are available for providers that have a little pouch in them where you can hold the Narcan that would allow for providers to come in, pick up Narcan in a belt and have it on their person while they're providing services in the facility. Also, there has been a kiosk vending machine, I guess you would call it, with Narcan at Los Padrinos. So some very significant improvements. What the staff and I are committed to do is, as we conduct our regular annual inspections, to make sure we're asking about that so that we can report back to the board and the public on the actual full implementation on this Narcan procedure. And then finally, there's a link that is not active on the agenda to the DCFS fact sheet. I'm very pleased to say that our team has decided we're going to do a series of 4 town halls to talk about our fact sheets because they're really awesome. Donisha Smith and her team have done an incredible job of building some data-driven information about who the young people are who are detained in our probation facilities. And so they will be informative town halls that will talk about the overlaps between probation and the Department of Children and Family Services, about education, about developmental disabilities, then how that impacts our detained population, as well as about the charges that youth are facing and some myth busting, I think I might call it, based on the data. So I'm really looking forward to that. And please pay attention to our social media for invitations to those town halls coming up. That's it.
So how does the motion read?
So the motion is to agendize at the July meeting a conversation about the grievances, complaints, and how they overlap.
Anything else any commissioner would like to add to that? Commissioner Terry?
Just a quick question. Is this something that ad hoc presents on, or do we ask the department to, are we asking them to present on something, or do those
We are
details get
asking,
worked out?
I think the plan is, and Brooke, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, or Millie was also there, to ask representatives from the department and also possibly some other outside folks who have expertise in these issues to present at the meeting.
Okay, with that, do we have any written or live public comment?
No written public comment on this. If anyone would like to make live public comment, please approach the podium or raise your hand on WebEx or dial *3 on your phone.
I'm not very clear. Are we talking about the motion comments or talking about the agenda number 3?
Both.
Both. Okay. Yeah, I want to talk about the motion, the complaints process and procedures. I have heard several times regarding. First of all, yeah, I apologize for my First Amendment. Yeah, that's the number one thing. Second of all is I heard so many some sort of commissioner talking about the probation officer just start a fight, beat up people, or sexually harass people, or whatever, all those complaints. Yes, I am very, very curious to actually read some report that I really want to watch some video footages that what happened 20 minutes before that incident. Because if you ask me, asking a random deputy probation officer just saying randomly beat someone up in the facility, that is something I do not believe. That is something that I will only believe that when I see the evidence. And then second of all, I want to know more about how does this complaint evaluated. And then I also want to know what are the disciplinary action against the probation officers, because LAPD, they have a whole process about the commissioner's process, and then they have an appeal to Board of Rights. There's another process, and then so there's always something called a due process. But I do not feel safe on behalf of those probation officers, because when we have a full board of probation that just have a politically correct propaganda, and I'm just very concerned that if their due process in this case will be violated. So I'm fully support more transparency on the complaint process, investigation process, and the most important, the disciplinary process. So yeah, that is something, because I just have a hard time to process the information that the probation officer just randomly beat someone up in the facility.
Thank you.
And to be clear, I was actually answering Helen's question about her First Amendment rights, about giving public comment regarding pending legislation. Do we have any online public commenters? Okay, I'm glad that you brought that up. And I want to be clear that this is coming from the policy subcommittee. This is not suggesting that the Probation Oversight Commission would become involved in the investigations around complaints, but rather addressing, and it's actually a very valid point, since our sister commission in the Civilian Oversight Commission has been discussing this extensively. This policy committee is addressing how, exactly what you said, what probation's policy says, not the actual investigation around the complaints or grievances that happen, but rather how do the policies interact. So thank you for clarifying that, because I don't think we've stated that specifically.
Okay, with that, should we, no, we don't have a motion.
Oh, we have to vote. You're right.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to call the roll on the motion about agendizing this complaint and grievance procedure and overlap. Thank you. Get my list. Commissioner Harris?
Aye.
Commissioner Kokani?
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith?
Aye.
Commissioner Prater?
Aye.
Commissioner Terry?
Aye.
And Chair Mundo.
Aye.
Okay, so with Commissioners Canales and Jackson and Ship absent, the motion carries unanimously.
Okay. We will now go to item number 7. We will be discussing and taking possible action up to and including voting to direct the Office of the Inspector General, OIG, to issue a subpoena for outstanding data and information. As part of this agenda item, the Executive Director of the Probation Oversight Commission will share information about outstanding data and information requests. Wendy, please proceed with your updates.
Thank you. So you have in your packet, and it's attached to the agenda, a copy of the memo that was sent. Oh, thank you. It's right in front of me. A copy of the memo that was sent for June. You'll see, I'm very pleased to report that the vast majority of the information that has been requested has been received. There is one item that has not been received, or it was, I should say, received but incomplete, which was the adult core area office caseload data. It's actually something that Chair Mundo brought up earlier in the discussion, which is we received information for January of 2024 that is pretty extensive, that it lists the office area by address, including the number of probation officers that are assigned and the caseload, so that you could, with very simple math, determine what the average caseload might be. The information we received though was a year old. So we received then updated information for April 30th, 2025, but what it was missing was the number of DPOs assigned and number of DPOs in the office, which doesn't allow for the calculation of the average caseload. So the missing item is the request for a correction of that. I will say I have not pushed for it this month in the way that I generally have, other than just sending this memo. It's possible that it could be received. The second item that I'll bring up is on today's agenda, which is the continued request for information about callouts and data around human resources that were not received, although I did hear the chief say that he agreed that that should be provided by Director Carlisle. So you may choose to request this information in the form of a formal motion. Neither of them has been requested by a motion yet. They both have happened during live meetings. So that is your choice under this agenda item. And I'm really pleased about the receipt of that information. I do also think that we have a couple of upcoming due dates of some of the continuous provision of data, like the snapshot. But that will all be drafted in when I draft the memo after this meeting. It'll be included if it hasn't been received for you to discuss at the July meeting. Any questions about that?
Commissioners? Any thoughts of a motion? Any request?
Formal request.
Okay, so I hear Commissioner Meredith saying that you want to make a formal request for this information.
Request first.
Yes.
Formal request first, then we can follow up if need be.
Okay, so I think we need a motion for whichever, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but whichever information you want to request. There's two things. There's the information on the memo that's listed as incomplete, and then the information from today's agenda under item number 5.
Those 2 items, you can read them into the motion.
Okay. So is there a second?
Second. Okay. And to be clear, it's going to be what was missing and what was missing today.
Yes.
Okay. Well, do we have any live or public comment? Or written?
Yes, no written public comment, but we will take live public comment. And if you want to make a comment online, you can raise your hand. So this is on item number 7, and specifically the motion to formally request the adult core area office caseload data and the data from item number 5 on today's agenda, which reads update on callouts, leave rates, and hiring and terminations, and an update on deployment and reassignments and the impact on field services.
Okay, that is pretty clear. Start with number 7. I'm constantly hearing the conversation about, requesting information. And then right now, to the point, we were talking about issuing a subpoena. What went wrong? Because why those problem only occurs in the sheriff board and the probation board? When I was going to the fire department board or the police department board, I do not see those problems. So my advice to our director is maybe our director could visit LAPD board executive director. Maybe our director can visit LAFD board of director, because obviously that two board somehow they were able to maintain a friendly relationship with the chief. They were able to work together with the chief. They were able to work together with the union member without having an internal civil war. And then they do not have problem where a commissioner constantly asking the information, where the chief constantly denying the information. It's a much more peaceful board right there. So maybe our director can learn something from those board, and then if we can use that method of management coming back to this board, then maybe we are having a much more productive meeting, that we don't have to wait for 1 year just for one information, because LAPD board requests something from the chief, they get it 1 week, 2 weeks, something like that. Done. I know that. Second of all, regarding the request information regarding the hiring or whatever, yeah, I just want to echo the comments from one of the commissioners that we are not trying to carve the cornerstone about the hiring. We are just trying to find a ways to expedite the hiring, and not just cutting a shortcut or whatever. Not really that.
Thank you. I don't see any other commenters in the room. Do we have any commenters online? No. Okay.
If no further comments, Wendy, would you take roll here?
Yes, thank you. So we are voting on creating a formal request via motion for the item marked as incomplete on the memo and the items under agenda item number 5 today. Please vote yes, no, or abstain. Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Kokani?
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith?
Yes.
Commissioner Prater?
Yep.
Commissioner Terry?
Yes.
Chair Mundo?
Yes.
Okay, so with Commissioners Canales, Jackson, and Ship absent, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 8 is for matters not posted on the agenda to discuss or to place on a future meeting agenda for action. Commissioners, do you have any announcements or items you would like placed on the future agenda? Commissioner Prater?
I would like for us to sort of figure out a way to circle back to a comment the chief made today when I raised the concern about what staff we have in the field to support I know there's been a lot of conversation about youth stepping down into community. And he mentioned something about there as a classification of staff that don't have to be, what did you say, sworn, I believe is the terminology used. Want to make sure that we can follow back up with them about the progress they're making in that regard. If they're thinking about creative solutions to filling this human resources gap, then would love to be kept updated on a regular basis with respect to that.
Okay, kind of fleshing that out a little more. Is that correct?
And maybe this is an area where DYD, maybe this is an area of collaboration as well, if it's for non-sworn officers. I think that would be an important part of the discussion.
I agree.
Great.
Yes. Any other concerns, comments? Okay. I just want to make a general comment. I visited Los Padrinos on Memorial Day morning and sat there as staff walked in, probation officers, DSOs, talked with them. And the ones that keep coming to work under these conditions, deserve our admiration. And because they come on holidays with short notice and they stay. So I just wanted to put a shout out there to the Los Padrinos staff for that day and every day. If no other comments, we'll move to agenda item 9, opportunity for the public to address the Probation Oversight Commission. If there is anybody here live or online that would like to speak for 2 minutes and exercise your First Amendment right, please join us.
So this is the area for comment on items not on the agenda, and we welcome public comment in the room, which we'll start with. And then also, if you have comments to make online, please use the raise your hand function. You can also send us an email, info@poc.lacounty.gov, and we'll attach it to the agenda. Or if you're calling in, dial *3, and you're welcome to begin.
Okay, so I have a hard time to understand the legal languages of the Menendez case. So, but based on my limited English skills, based on my limited understanding about this case, is that the Menendez brothers will be soon be part of the probation department, I believe. So that is something I have a concern about this department, because 100 years ago, when you kill your mother, when you kill your father, and then you receive a capital punishment. 50 years ago, when you kill your mother, when you kill your father, you end up life in prison. That's it. And then right now, we are talking about somehow when you kill your mother, when you kill your father, somehow you are end up in prison. Now, what will happen 50 years later? That when you kill your mother, when you kill your father, misdemeanor, book and release, you'll go home. No jail, no prison, no probation, you're just going home. So my concern is the public safety. I don't really know exactly how this brother will end up in this department, or if they will just simply be released back to home, like a stay-in-home probation or whatever. I'm not very clear about those details, but I am concerned about the case. I am concerned about the law and the consequences. There's the reason why that either we were, using those cash incentives, towards the kids, $200 per month, $7,000 per year. When they do those, we continue to incentivize them, so maybe they can stay in probation. And then somehow I consider that some sort of a promotion, motivation to commit even more crimes. Same as this Menendez brothers. So if we are getting this kind of deal, then so many millions of other criminals who killed their father and mother, why they are not getting the same luxury of this deal of probation?
Do we have any commenters online? Nope. Okay.
Okay, thank you all for joining us and sharing your comments. As a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel at LA County POC. To receive reminders about our upcoming meetings, visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov to subscribe to our email list. It is now 12:40. Can I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
Motion to adjourn today's meeting.
And may I have a second?
Second.
Okay, with the motion from Commissioner Kakani and the second from Commissioner Terry, please unmute yourself and vote with a voice vote. Aye. Aye.